On the final day of 2023, the Tennessee Titans shut out in the second half. They fall 26-3 to the Houston Texans on the road, falling to 5-11 with one regular season game remaining. Welcome into Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. Alongside Titans legend Kevin Dyson, I'm Lucas Panzica. Again, the final, Texans 26, Titans 3, and KD. Games are starting to blur together a little bit as the Titans try and limp to the finish.
And it's becoming somewhat of redundant. I mean, it's kind of the same kind of conversation after a game like this. You know, obviously the woes on the offensive line become even more and more evident that's got to be a priority going into 24. It's that was hard to watch. The offensive line just got dismantled again. That was one of their poorest, I don't want to say effort, because I feel like the guys are playing hard, working hard, but poorest performances. Tannehill, the guys. I mean, I felt like even Tannehill, in his right regard, had a pretty solid day, considering what was taking place in front of him. That is obviously the priority going into this offseason, this free agency period, draft, whatever they choose, the route they choose, they've got to solidify those five guys up front. There remains to be seen who will be a familiar name next year. I think Skrunsky is going to be one, but the rest of them, it remains to be seen. But that was rough. There were some positive things. I thought Tannehill did some things well. D-Hop and the King both crossing over 1,000 yards in a tumultuous season. That's respectable. Potentially a Pro Bowl for Derrick Henry. Defense, they fought hard. They just didn't get a whole lot of help from the offense. Offense couldn't convert inside the red zone again. Third down was terrible. They couldn't really move the chains. But again, offensive line, when you did get in scoring position, give up a couple sacks. It was just kind of the way of the world today. Kudos to the Houston Texans. They look like they got their quarterback of the future. Hope Will Levis is okay because they're going to need him for the next few years. But today was just another redundant conversation of you can't do nothing without an offensive line, and the offensive line struggled again today.
It directly led to 6 quarterback sacks by the Houston Texans. Will Levis, as you said, leaving the game with a foot injury in the second quarter. He did not return. It was Ryan Tannehill who went the distance for the Titans. And as you look at some of the final numbers, it really reflects on how that game played out, a 26-3 loss in Houston. KD, you mentioned third down. The Titans' third down defense showed up. Texans went 3 for 11. Titans went 1 for 12. And you're seeing that trend kind of continue of the defense in the red zone stepping up as one of the best in the National Football League. The offense in the red zone, one of the worst. I mean, you figure if the Titans' offense inside the 20 was half as good as the defense has been in that spot, that feels like maybe 3 more wins this season than this team has. And here we are at 5-11 going into Week 18.
Well, think about this, Lucas. Like, they are 4-7, I believe, in one-score games this year. If we probably do the data dive in all 11 of those games, right? You just flip that. You're in the hunt for potentially winning a division, right? Because now you're talking about 8-8, 8-7 team or whatever, 8-8 team, I guess it would be.
The Texans, Jags, and Colts all go into Week 18 with a shot at the division, all at 9-7.
9-7. So you think about it, if you flip that, you're in that conversation. So you talk about 11 of your 16 games are within one score. How many of those games were they in the red zone, they're unable to get touchdowns or points in general?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's going to be one of those things evident going to the offseason that you got to focus on and work on. You got to be better in that plus territory.
Titans today only getting into the red zone once. They go 0 for 1, end up in a goal-to-go situation, go for it on fourth down there late in the second half and do not get it. The Texans, on the flip side, 1 for 3 in the red zone, but ultimately outgaining the Titans 312 to 187. The Texans rushed it for 111 yards, most of that. Devin Singletary, who's having a really nice year.
Quietly.
With the Houston Texans. Yeah. Quietly, right? Because Damian Pierce comes in as the rookie for Houston last season. Feels like this rushing attack's going to be built around him moving forward. And then here comes Devin Singletary from Buffalo, ran all over the Titans at Nissan Stadium a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Today, 16 carries for 80 yards. And the rushing defense has suffered a lot for the Titans this year, KD, and it feels like we're especially seeing the fruits of all the turnover. Maybe fruits isn't the right word to use there, but all the turnover that's happened up front with the Tier Tarts and Jaleel Johnson's in and out.
Big Jeff being out.
Big Jeff being out, exactly. And it's just led to not even inconsistency at this point in the run defense, right? Consistently underperforming there at a spot where the Titans used to lean on that as a big strength.
Right. And if I'm going to flip this and try to find something positive in all that, even with that, they have found ways to be stringent in the plus territory and give their team a chance to win. There's only so much that you can do from a defense perspective of, the bend, don't break, that sort of thing, if you're not getting help from the other side of football. And that's not reclusing them from all their ills this year as well. They've given up a lot of big plays in the passing game and in the running game, things of that nature, third down conversions, red zone, all the things. You can still point fingers, if you will, that direction. But you look at the woes on the offense and how it impacts, and we talk about complementary football. You hear Coach Mack talk about that all the time. That complementary football that didn't exist a vast majority of this season, and that is become evident in the statistics that you're talking about, because there's only so much I can hold off for so long. After a while, the levee's going to break, and that's kind of how the season has gone for the Titans.
Levis, before he left with that foot injury, 2 for 6 for only 16 yards. There was the deep ball on the second play from scrimmage where the Titans tried to attack Houston deep early. Traylon Burks unable to hang on. Levis nearly throwing a pick six on the play after. And then from there, it didn't take long before he was knocked out.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because had he caught that ball, right, I don't know if he scores. If Titans scored, maybe they just get 3. Who knows? The way the offense has been in the red zone, we don't know what's going to take place. But that was a critical moment. You think about that. You didn't flip the field. You're in that red zone. Now you got some energy because they were low energy. And that play seemed to deflate them even more. And I'm not putting all this on Traylon, but just what I'm saying is it's opportunities like that are missed that could be significant going down the road. Now, that was early on. That's not the reason why they lost this game by any stretch of imagination. But by making that play, could have turned the momentum to somewhere where this game might have been closer than what it ended up being.
We'll talk more about Traylon Burks, I think, throughout the course of the afternoon as far as guys that will have a microscope on them throughout the upcoming offseason. But we've got all afternoon to do it, and this show is about you guys. Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company, 615-737-1045 for you to jump in. You can also hang out with us on 1045 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Come ring in the new year with us here on 1045 The Zone, myself and Dr. Kevin Dyson. We lead off, as we usually do, with Eric in Nashville on the phones. Hey, Eric.
Hey, guys. Happy New Year to you.
What's up, man?
Hey, guys, I'm going to get to the officiating in a minute, but one quick thing about the offensive line. You're right, our offensive line stinks. We gave up 6 sacks. I think now we've given up 62 on the year, and I think Harold Landry just had the 1 sack. So now we've actually given up more sacks than we sacked the quarterback with 58. But as far as the officiating, guys, it just seems that play just started rolling downhill when we got the run into the kicker. They drove down the field and got the touchdown. But here's the thing. The very next play on that Will Levis fumble, not only did his foot get stepped on, it was clearly a helmet-to-helmet hit when he fumbled the ball. No flag thrown. And here's the thing that's frustrating about it. I saw Will Levis throw up his hand and said, hey, where's the flag? That should not have been a touchdown. That should have been a penalty for helmet-to-helmet. Because I remember a few weeks ago, Derrick Henry got hit with a helmet-to-helmet, and there was no flag on that. It's like, come on now. Because my point is this. Do you think if that had happened to a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, or Tua Tagovailoa with his concussion issues, that nobody's talking about that? Maybe they don't throw a flag, but there's like outrage over that. But if Will Levis, no big deal. Because I saw Will Levis throw up his hand. That should have been a penalty, helmet-to-helmet, and no touchdowns. I'm not saying we won the game, but it's just frustrating when a play like that happens. And then, of course, the next series, we get called for illegal shift. We just get – and, again, I don't want to get upset about the officiating, guys. I'm not saying we'd have won the game. We're a terrible team. That's not the issue. But I've seen several calls, not on this game, but against the Colts games, where it was obvious penalties on the other team and there were no flags called. I mean, all I want is consistency, guys. And that clearly should have been a flag on helmet-to-helmet and no touchdown. Guys, it's always good to talk to you. Happy New Year to you. Y'all take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for the call, Eric.
I appreciate that call. This is, again, we can get on this. This is a whole different tangent, but they are obviously doing things to protect players. Quarterback, let's start with quarterback. Start with Tom Brady and that pocket and going low and going high and all those things. I think this is it looks like it's going to start trending towards the replay after a score. When you see something that's questionable like that, whether the referees make the call or not, they're going to start sending it up to New York and say, look at this. Should we review this as a hit and a penalty? Because I think that's where they're going to end up going to, because it's so subjective. I mean, because everything's so fast and it's bang, bang, bang that the referees are going to miss those calls. So I'm not faulting the referees because those guys are moving extremely fast, and you can almost throw that every time because guys are moving so fast because you're so worried about it. Because there's been times when I'm like, that wasn't even close to a penalty, and then you slow it down and all the different things. But I think it's trending, and I'm probably wrong in this, but it's trending to that where it's going to be almost like a score when it's a questionable play where they're going to start going to New York and say, hey, they're going to buzz the referee, say, we need to look at this. I just think that's where it's going because there are those subjective calls where it could have maybe affect the outcome of the game. Obviously, a guy went out after that play. Now, that wasn't because of the head injury, but to that point of had that been because of a head injury and they didn't make that call, now what?
21 total yards of penalties in this game between the two teams, 3 for 15 on the Titans, only 1 for 6 on the Houston Texans. Of course, Eric calling
Which was on the quarterback hit.
Right. Of course, Eric calling in about missed calls as well. Officiating going to be a hot topic around the league after what happened Saturday between Dallas and Detroit. I don't know if anything from this game is going to be used as a point of reference here in Week 17, but we've got a lot to dive into. 615-737-1045 as the Titans fall 26-3 in Houston. They are 5-11 heading into the regular season finale, going straight to your phone calls when we come back. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 104.5 The Zone. 26-3, the final. Titans fall in Houston against the Texans. They drop to 5-11 on the season. The Texans improve to 9-7 and head into Week 18 with a 3-team race at the top of the AFC South. Colts, Jags, Texans, all in play for a division title. The Titans on the outside looking in, of course, officially eliminated from playoff contention a few weeks ago, and now 5-11 heading into the regular season finale. Alongside Dr. Kevin Dyson, I'm Lucas Panzica. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. So this show is about you. You can hop in on 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. The F&M Bank chat is very active with their grievances. Much to discuss today, whether it's about the game, the upcoming offseason. The floor is yours. 615-737-1045. Back to the phones we go with Malika in Nashville up next on Titans Talkback.
Happy New Year, guys. Thanks for taking my call. It's just been a horrible season. We had a chance to win the division and hopefully win it all, and there was two rookie quarterbacks that were, the Colts and the Texans players, but no, we just ruined everything. So we need to say goodbye to Mike Vrabel and see if we could get a better coach. Thanks, guys. Can't wait for next year.
Thanks for the call, Malika.
Malika starting us off with the Mike Vrabel chant. I mean, you've talked about it for weeks, and I just don't see that being part of the offseason moves. But we've seen crazier things. Letting Craig Ackerman go with a few games ago, when there's obviously other things that are wrong right now with the season. In the middle of the season is something to be considered. But here we go with the first let Mike Vrabel go chant.
Probably won't be the last of the day.
It won't be.
But Amy Adams Strunk didn't exactly come out with a statement, but there was reporting coming from Titans brass that their faith is in Mike Vrabel, the vote of confidence, right, that you see so often before a head coach is fired. I would say don't look at the quote-unquote vote of confidence being reported from Amy Adams Strunk as your evidence that Mike Vrabel is back. Look at what the Titans have done over the course of the last calendar year and then some as your evidence that Mike Vrabel will be back. He's going to be your head coach next year.
Well, let's talk about it. If we say he's not in the hot seat, but which positions are at this point? Is Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh in the hot seat?
I think the discourse around Mike Tomlin is as tenuous as it's ever been in that era, right? Because just the Kenny Pickett thing is not trending in the right direction, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I'd say
that's a franchise has a tendency to keep their guys.
Sure.
They long tenure.
Yeah, if you had to put money on it, I bet most of us would say Mike Tomlin sticks around.
What about my man Belichick?
Belichick's out of there.
You think Belichick's
you gotta
out?
think he's out of there.
So Steelers, we still don't know what the Raiders are going to do.
Chargers are in the market.
And Chargers are in there. That's right. Chargers, Raiders. Cleveland, he might mess around and win rookie coach of the year after his
Kevin
year.
Stefanski, no doubt.
After his year. Chicago?
I think Matt Eberflus, that's a big question mark. To me, Ron Rivera in Washington is a big you got new ownership, part of the picture there as well.
So there's a lot of conversation.
And Arthur Smith in Atlanta also.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly not a sure thing that he's back in 2024.
And then if you put the Titans in there, there are some pretty marketable potential people on the market that have had some success in this league. Not that Vrabel's going anywhere. I think he's going to get an opportunity to right the ship. If you see another year like this year, next year, I don't even think he'd have any question about it. I don't think so. I think he would understand the business aspect. He's been around the game, been around this game, particular professional game, long enough that he understands over 20 years of being in the NFL. He understands the business aspect of it. And I think he would get that. I think he would, as a competitor, as a person who understands football, want the opportunity to right the ship and get a chance to get back to the pinnacle of the profession. And so, but potentially there are a lot of marketable jobs. I mean, I don't know how people feel about the Raiders per se in Vegas, but that's always an interesting spot. The Pats, they're not the Pats of the early 2000s with Tom Brady, but it's always a great ownership, great franchise. Chargers, is another potential spot there in L.A. Bears is an interesting one because do you feel like you have your quarterback of the future there? And that would be interesting to who they – because I think you got to go offensive-minded coach there.
Justin Fields was pretty good today.
He was. And, somebody say Vrabel was go. I couldn't see him being a candidate for something like that just because I think you got to be offensive-minded coach if they're going to go with Fields as a quarterback of the future there. Commander is another interesting one too.
I agree with you about Mike Vrabel coming back next year and the thought that the pressure's really on if we fast forward to a year from now and we're seeing similar results. And why is that? Because the roster, the responsibility of that roster that's compiled for 2024 is going to be more on the shoulders of Vrabel than it is now.
Right.
Because it's not right now. It's on the part of it is, certainly, but the majority of it
goes back to JR.
Still on the shoulders of John Robinson.
Yeah.
And as we get deeper into the Mike Vrabel era, the more that responsibility is going to shift over to Vrabel and Carthon. And we'll get to a point next year where the majority of this roster you can attribute to Mike Vrabel / Rand Carthon, and then we can have that conversation.
Yeah. And Rand will get the pass because he's just got here.
Sure.
So
I'll say this, KD. Titan season ticket holders get a Christmas card from the Titans every year. My roommate is a Titan season ticket holder, and he put the Christmas card up on the fridge. Who's front and center on that Christmas card? It's Amy Adams Strunk, and it's Mike Vrabel. Guy ain't getting fired, guys.
He ain't going
Sorry. 615-737-1045. Kenny the mailman next on Titans Talkback. What's up, Kenny?
Fellas, how are y'all doing?
Good to hear
good,
from
man.
You know what? I try to live my life. I try to find something positive no matter what. And, it's hard, some situations. But if you dwell on the negative, it'll just eat you alive. I know from the bottom of my heart, I really, really do think the Titans could beat Florida State. I really do.
Last night, certainly, Kenny.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about the offensive line. It's the most unique grouping, really, in sports, if you think about it. Talent is one thing, but it's 5, and you really need 8 of them because of the length of the season, that work together, that step. It's almost like having 300-pound Rockettes. They all go the same way. They all are of one mind. Let's say you go out and buy 3 free agents and draft 2 more. 24 practices will not gel any of these groups. They are hurting again for next year. And I don't know how you dig out. 0 confidence in talent acquisition, 0 confidence in offensive coaching. So maybe y'all can comment on that.
Yeah.
Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, Kenny.
That's a great perspective. I mean, I've said it here for years. Like, of all positions of football, the one that does not substitute at all, or 2 if you count the quarterback, but the one position that doesn't substitute in all positions is offensive line. Red zone, middle of the field, all the things backed up, all the things offensive line. And to have continuity with that offensive line, a kinship, that's why it may be the most important positions in football. I know the quarterback is the face of the franchise and makes the most money and is all the things, right? But ultimately, it's the guys that in front of him are the most important. If you can't protect, you can't run, it doesn't really matter what that quarterback looks like and what he does. I don't care how much he makes. So you have to be able to solidify that thing. But next year, again, as we went into this whole offseason with I'm going to say makeshift offensive line. I don't mean it to that disparity, but a makeshift offensive line, but a bunch of new guys, a whole new offensive line. Aside from one guy who just got here this year to guard, I think you're going to see 4 different starters on that offensive line next year, except for Skoronski. Am I saying the man's name right?
Skoronski, yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's the only name that you can write in pen for next season. Peter Skoronski, left guard.
That's it. Everybody else will be new. Now, to his point, in the new, and I've seen Edelman and a couple other people talk about this fact in the NFL, and I'm one of those, and I benefited from them reducing the amount of time we had training camp and how much you can hit in the early 2000s, let alone what they have now with the new bargaining agreement, and you can only have XYZ practice only this many days in pads and this many days in the offseason. It's completely different from even when I played just 15, 20 years ago. So add that to the mix of, and you can't bang, you can't hit, it's so evident and important. And again, we talked about this in the preseason. the philosophy of the Titans has been they're not playing their guys in the preseason. They played the backups the whole preseason. And the offensive line got a little more burned than, say, Derrick Henry and some Tannehill and some of the other guys. But with the lack of training camp preparation, the lack of offseason hitting and banging with a makeshift offensive line, that preseason, to me, becomes even more crucial to build that continuity of a group that's the most important part of football, especially on offense. I will say the most important part of offense because the defensive line might be the most important on defense side of the ball, but in football, the offensive line is the most important thing, and not having that time to really work that thing out this whole offseason. We had rookies on either end for vast majority of this, and in and out injuries, and it just was rough. It was rough, and Vrabel and everybody would admit to it. So we're not saying anything that nobody that watched this team all year long wouldn't echo.
Today felt like a microcosm of all the offensive line issues, just from the number of bodies. I mean, John Ojukwu, Andre Dillard, Jalen Duncan.
Duncan got his head beat into that.
Yeah. The Will Anderson, Texans had 6 sacks, as we mentioned. Will Anderson with 2 of them, back-to-back, essentially, on that late drive at the end of the second quarter, where, I mean, just ran right by Andre Dillard like he's not there, right?
Yeah.
Andrew Rupsich gets in at right guard. Will Levis gets hurt on one of the ensuing plays, out with the foot injury for the rest of the game. Today felt like, I'm not going to say rock bottom because we've tried to sit here and say it can't get worse with the Titans' offensive line situation. I think that phrase was uttered a few times last season. Yeah. Well, it got worse. Last season, Titans allowed 49 sacks, KD. This year, 62. It's an average of 3.9 per game.
Gosh. Who took the brunt of that? Tannehill?
That's a good question.
Because they played about the same amount of games at this point.
Who took the majority of those? I'm trying to think of, I mean, this was one of the worst, 6 sacks allowed, and Tannehill took most of them, playing most of the game. I bet it would still be Tannehill because you think back to that Cleveland game as well. Tannehill was the quarterback. Levis did a good job of trying to get out of some of those situations, but he could only do so much.
Yeah, and Tannehill held the ball a lot early.
Yeah.
Some phantom sacks. Yeah. Yeah, that's a rough one, man. 60-something sacks. Oof.
62 with 1 game to go. It's not the worst in the league. The New York Giants have a whopping 77 last I checked on the amount of sacks the Giants, and that's not updated from today. They had a thrilling loss against the Rams.
That's what they say, man. It could always be worse.
It can literally always be worse.
We could be the worst team in the league.
That's true. That's true. You're not that. You're 5-11, but you're not that.
And true told, 5-11, and you talk about 11 games this year of 1-score games.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Even the Texans game before this one was a 1-score game. So it's like, it's not as bad as the season seemed. You look in retrospect, you flip those 1-win games around, which they had for Vrabel's tenure. For the vast majority of his first part of his tenure, we're winning those games. Now you're talking about a team that might make the playoffs.
It used to be with Mike Vrabel and the Titans, just if you got it into the fourth quarter, you had confidence.
You felt confidence they're going to pull
this team
it out.
was in it. They had a shot to pull it out. And the 1-score games were a strength of his. Mike Vrabel was starting to hang his hat on doing more with less, right? Henry goes down, pushed for the 1 seed, coach of the year. I mean, how many games in Mike Vrabel's Titans career where they're down their starting quarterback or starting left tackle or Derrick Henry or A.J. Brown that they just found a way? It feels like this season we've maxed out. Mike Vrabel has maxed out on his ability to do more with less. It's just, I said it earlier this week, it's too much less.
It is. The injuries catch up to you. All the things catch up to you. The inefficient offensive in the red zone, injuries, the makeshift, all the personnel movement, all those things, eventually it's going to catch up to you. And it did in this last calendar year. You know, but I'll go back even more. Watch this. You go back to that Giants game last year, the opener, when they had the lead and they lost it. That might have been a sign that we weren't even watching because they ended up 7-2, even though after that. But it seemed kind of you were losing that aura about you of we can overcome, because after that game you start having injuries, you start missing people. Derrick Henry goes down. Like there's a whole lot of things that started happening. You weren't as apt to come back from some of the things you had been the 2 or 3 years previously.
615-737-1045. Titans Talkback is presented by League Company. The Titans trust their home stadium to League Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play should be to visit leaguecompany.com. League Company, all you need. Back to the phones, 615-737-1045. Drew in Nashville is next. Hey, Drew.
Yes, good afternoon, fellas.
What you got?
I want to talk about Derrick Henry and Tajay Shop.
Tajay Spears.
My strong opinion, Derrick Henry needs to be and should resign next year. With that running back position, nobody has not been talking about, and I like Tajay Shop. Very shifty guy and can move the chains at times. But notice that man has not scored a touchdown but once this year. Yeah, Tannehill could have had him at the 5. Who knows if he had a guy in it or not. But Titans running back scores touchdowns. And we need to start talking about that. So just want to let y'all know about that and kind of talk about that for a minute. So thank you.
Thanks for the call, Drew. Well, he doesn't have to resign or step down or anything like that, KD. This is the final year of Derrick Henry's contract. Yeah. Today, 42 yards, on 12 rushes.
Yeah, crossed the 1,000-yard mark.
Yes.
The backfield, along with the 5 guys in front, will be different. So there's 7. Well, Levis, I guess you don't necessarily count, but from the beginning of the year, 7. We'll say 6 because you got to have the guard that's going to be starting. So 6 people will be different next year, we assume. I looked at what Tannehill did today. I think he still has value, even if it is more in a backup role. I think there's a lot of teams that would be happy to have his ability even in a backup role. Like, could you see him going somewhere like Carolina and being a backup there, to Bryce? Like, you know what I mean? Like, or would he be willing to come here for a cheaper ticket to be the backup here with offense he's very familiar with?
Atlanta. If Arthur Smith is back.
And he might even go back there to start, depending on how they see Riddler and all those things. So, and then Derrick Henry is a kind of the way of the NFL. I think teams have been willing to let backs go and do it by committee and get a guy maybe in the later rounds, even though Derrick Henry was a second-round pick. That's later rounds for the quality of back that he's been. You look at what happened with Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, coming off a Pro Bowl year, was let go. And you see that happening more and more in this league. So I think we got to get used to 22 not being here for sure. I'm almost 100% sure he will not be back. I think I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I'm still on the fence with Tannehill being back. Just depends on what the market is for his ability as a potential starter, but more or less a backup now. Because I think you look at there's a lot of teams that I think he can go, and if nothing else, be a backup. Look at Arizona.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of teams that we still don't know what Denver's going to do. Like, I know they owe a lot of money to Russell Wilson, but the fact that this man is having a better year statistically than Mahomes and got benched, they might be willing to eat that money. I don't know. So there's a different market for Tannehill than there is for the running back, and that's just the nature of the league right now. So I don't know. I think we got to get used to 22 being gone. And with that being said, this offseason, you'll kind of see where they're going to invest, if you will. We're all making the assumption that offensive line is going to be a big investment, whether it be free agency and or draft. But when I say in draft, if you got a top 10, top 5 pick in the draft, where's that value? That's not typical anymore of a running back. And I don't know if there's a running back coming out that is a top 5 pick. I don't know. So if that's not the case, then who's a free agent? Saquon, some of these other guys, are they willing to come here for lesser money? It's going to be interesting to see this February, March, April, what the Titans do.
615-737-1045. Titans fall in Houston 26-3. More of your phone calls when we come back. It's Titans Talkback, presented by League Company on 104.5 The Zone. Titans Talkback continues on 104.5 The Zone, presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Welcome back, everyone. Lucas Panzica with you alongside Titans legend Dr. Kevin Dyson and you. 615-737-1045 for you to jump in as the Titans fall to 5-11 on the season. 26-3, the loss at the Houston Texans. The Titans have now been swept by the Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. 0-5 against AFC South opponents heading into the regular season finale next week. Jacksonville coming into Nissan Stadium. They're looking to lock up the AFC South for back-to-back seasons. Kevin Dyson, when is the last time the Titans/Oilers franchise went winless in division play throughout the course of the regular season? Do a little Titans trivia here.
I'm going to go before Vrabel's era.
Definitely before that.
But I'm going to say after Jeff.
I'll give you a hint. Before your era.
Oh, it's even before mine.
Before your NFL career.
So Malarkey or Wisenhunt, they at least won one game.
It was the Houston Oilers.
Oh, wow. So,
the Tennessee Titans have never gone winless in the AFC South or Central.
So it was before. Dang. Okay. So they got to win next week then, keep that streak alive. So it was. They were probably in Houston then because when I was here, we won. Dang. I'm going to go. Is it Bum Phillips era?
1982 is the last time. And that was the shortened 9-game season due to the strike.
So 41 years ago.
It's the last time this franchise went 0 in division play. And a loss to Jacksonville next week would make it 0-6 against the AFC South.
Ooh, wow. And Jacksonville, they need this win to win the division, get in the playoffs, because I know it's real tight. So if they lose, I don't know how the tie breaks work between them, Houston, and Indianapolis.
It gets complicated,
yeah,
because there are a lot of splits there of winning one and losing one against the Colts and against the Texans.
Yeah,
all three teams are 9-7. Jacksonville could have locked up the division today. They defeated the Panthers 26-0. Trevor Lawrence didn't play, shoulder injury, and a Jacksonville win plus a Colts and Texans loss would have locked it up for Jacksonville. Colts won, beat the Raiders. Raiders are now eliminated. Texans won, obviously beating the Titans. So it goes into next weekend. Colts and Texans go head-to-head. And so we need to get official confirmation on this, but the way I understand it is if Jacksonville wins,
they win the division.
They win the division.
That makes sense.
Right. If the Texans win out, and Jacksonville loses, essentially if the Titans win next week, the winner of Colts-Texans wins the AFC South.
And then the other two are out of the playoffs, or one of them makes it?
Then it gets a little more complicated because the AFC wildcard race is just a log jam from top to bottom. So, playoff scenarios are all over the place in this week 17.
They said like 24 teams were still vying for a playoff spot at this late in the game.
Not that many have been eliminated.
That's crazy.
Titans have. But they are in the minority. There were, again, the Raiders eliminated today. So as we work through, the Chiefs currently down 10-7 against Cincinnati, looking to lock up the AFC West with a win, despite having lost 4 of their last 6. Denver have their backs against the wall. A loss leads to elimination. They lead the Chargers 3-0 at home. So we'll look around the Week 17 action because there was a lot of movement in the playoff race in both conferences. But we're here to talk to you, 615-737-1045. Rich in Smyrna is next on Titans Talkback. Hey, Rich.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing all right, man.
All right. Well, just a couple thoughts. First of all, Mike Vrabel owns a 51-41 record as the Titans head coach, which includes 3 playoff experiences since he took over in 2018. Just because the Titans plan to keep Vrabel as their head coach doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy with what they're seeing on the field. I think that their focus needs to stay locked in on what is most important for the Titans, and that's the development of Will Levis. They've committed to him. They brought him in. I think that any fans, quote unquote, who are calling for Vrabel to be fired are idiots. He's a great head coach. And if he was fired or traded, he'd have a job tomorrow. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Rich.
I would agree. He'd have a job fairly quick. He's been around the league long enough. He's worked with a lot of people. I think what would be interesting is, as you mentioned, like the Patriots, Belichick being gone, do the people that make decisions believe that he still has something left in his tank to be effective as a head coach in this juncture in his life, at his age and his experience, to be a head coach or even a coordinator, because he's up there, and he's been at the helm over there for 20 years, however long it's been. Is there a franchise that we mentioned that's probably going to be looking, believe that he can still have an impact with this generation of players? And if that's the case, if say he gets a job, somebody probably will give him an opportunity if he wants it. He may go to TV, but say he gets another job. Somebody like Vrabel, who has ties with him, they're pretty loyal. It's a brother club, man, and they're pretty loyal to people. And he would get a job fairly quickly as soon as he got released. But I think to that caller's point is, and as we talked about, there's a lot of potential movement that are marketable jobs. I mean, Steelers, that's always a marketable job. That potentially there's the rumbling that he might not be here. Patriots, as we just talked about. Raiders, that's a historical franchise. Everybody. Chargers, another one. We don't know what the Bears are going to do. Commanders.
The Bears, by the way, will have the number 1 overall pick
because of Carolina.
That's right.
Solidified that they get their pick. Panthers still got to make their decision. Falcons, maybe, we don't know. And Commanders, and that's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that we're speculating on. There's probably some others that we're not even thinking about, like that might come up. I don't know what they're going to say. The Giants, are they done with his magic? All of a sudden now he can't win, or they gave up 70-something sacks, or they going a different direction with the Giants. I don't see it, but crazier things have happened.
615-737-1045. Neil in Nashville, next on Titans Talkback. Hey, Neil.
Hey, guys. How are y'all?
Good. How you doing, man?
Hey, Kevin, man. Nice to finally get to talk to you, man. I appreciate the time you put on the team when you played here, man. You and Mason and Chris Sanders, man. I thoroughly enjoyed watching you guys play as a Tennessee hometown boy. So,
thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
I was going to talk about the offensive line. The first thing I got to say is that guy Rich that called in, there's no way that you can say Vrabel's a great head coach. One, this offensive line is not John Robinson's fault. Let's talk about this. Who signed Dillard? Vrabel. Mm-hmm. Who drafted Skoronski, an offensive tackle, and puts him at guard, and he's getting smashed? Who gave Brewer a $4 million contract for a 280-pound center that can't snap and can't block? Brunskill's been okay, and right tackle's been terrible. Not to mention, they didn't draft a wide receiver until the 7th round. They looked into Hopkins. They won't even throw Burks the ball, which I understand he's been hurt and all that. Yeah, I'll give Brown the Brown trade, Robinson, that wasn't great. But Vrabel needs to go. And Rand can go too if this is how it's going to be. I'm tired of mediocrity. I'm not putting excuses on nobody from here on out. I don't want to hear about Robinson. This is Vrabel's team. And if he's going to start making roster decisions, that's not good. If Rand's going to be the GM, he needs to get the players. Vrabel is not a GM. Now, that's just my thing. I'd like to see us go get the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. It's turning into an offensive league. But that guy says Vrabel's a great head coach. I don't know anybody that's 5 and 11. Whatever the last 5 and 11. No, but over the last,
5 and 18?
5 and 18?
5 and 18, 19, something like that.
Oh, right. If you include that 7-game losing skid from last season.
Yeah. Absolutely. That gets you fired.
Yeah.
100%. So, but guys, I appreciate y'all taking me time, but man, I want whatever beer that guy's drinking and watching the games. If he thinks he's a phenomenal head coach, then that guy needs to watch San Francisco. They need to watch some Baltimore Ravens and Andy Reid and all those kind of head coaches. And Belichick is a great head coach. Yeah. Tom Brady doesn't win 6 Super Bowls without top 10 defenses either. So he's the greatest defensive coach of all time. It's not even close.
Hey, Neil, quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you be better receptive to Vrabel staying here if he got a more innovative offensive play caller.
Yes. Well, and also, too, personally, if I'm the Titans, I'm dropping our offensive line coach, and if I'm Amy, I'm calling Mike Munchak right now and be like, what can I do to get you to come back to Nashville? I'm sorry. We left on bad terms, but let's get you back home from Denver. You know, here's a blank check. What do you need to coach these guys? Because the offensive line isn't getting better. He hired the assistant offensive line coach when he fired Kevin Carter. I'm a huge football fan. I watched the moves he's making. And personally, Shane Bowen don't look right since old Jim Swartz went down to Cleveland. So what's that telling you guys? I'm okay. He needs to hire a different offensive line coach because and maybe switch Skoronski to left tackle because he didn't play guard in college, and he's getting hammered over there.
Yeah.
And I don't see anybody getting better at all.
Yeah.
One bit.
Thanks for the call, Neil.
Appreciate it, man.
A lot there, KD. Let's unpack some of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the other side, Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. You can jump in 615-737-1045 on 1045 The Zone. Titans Talkback continues on 104.5 The Zone following the Titans' 26-3 loss at the Houston Texans from NRG Stadium. Alongside Dr. Kevin Dyson, I'm Lucas Panzica, Jackson Williams producing. And you guys on the phones, 615-737-1045 for you to jump in. A few lines are open if you would like to finish out your 2023 with us. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lead Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play, visit leadcompany.com. Lead Company, all you need. So, KD, we finished up the last segment with Neil in Nashville calling in about Mike Vrabel, and he points to the offensive line, where, rightly enough, we sit here and say it's John Robinson's roster, and Neil comes in and he says, okay, then let's look at what impact Vrabel has had in personnel on this roster. And you look straight to the offensive line. It's Andre Dillard at left tackle. Well, Mike Vrabel / Ran Carthon, right? Because they are one. As far as decision-making is concerned, the collaboration that the Titans have told us about, you have to lump those guys in together. I think people get caught into assuming this is just a prototypical, regular general manager, head coach dynamic the way that it was with John Robinson and Mike Vrabel, and it's not. The Titans have told us that. So Mike Vrabel and Ran Carthon did bring in Andre Dillard at left tackle. They did bring in Peter Skoronski at left guard. They did give Aaron Brewer that deal and that job at center, and they did bring in Daniel Brunskill at right guard. They brought in Chris Hubbard as well at right tackle, and that was, you know, a rare bright spot on the offensive line until he goes down for the season, and that became a turnstile. So let's just look at the offensive line. Here we are with one game to go in the regular season. How do you kind of view Mike Vrabel's impact personnel-wise on this roster in the here and now, understanding he's going to have the whole offseason to add to that as well?
That's a great question. I think it's like this. If you put it in context and compare it, say like education, right? And a kid comes in your class, everybody has different learning abilities. And it's the responsibility of that teacher to get everybody to a certain level. I think that's where you look at it from a personnel standpoint. Regardless of who made the pick or who decided to sign and all the different things, the responsibility becomes that's what coaching is. How do I prepare these guys to play at an optimum level? How am I developing these guys? And you've heard Vrabel say this time and time again. We got to coach these guards harder. We got to coach these guys better. We got to do a better job. We got to prepare them. Well, then if they are not prepared, if they're not showing progression that's to the favorable side of things, then that becomes me coaching as much as personnel and picking. Because the NFL's, again, I've said this time and time again, the NFL's not made up of a roster of 53 Hall of Famers. If it was, we'd know who's going to win the Super Bowl every year. Right? That's not the case. You pick guys and you hope that they mesh together to come up with a cohesive unit, a team that gets hot at the right time with a few injuries as possible to go on a streak to make a run towards the Super Bowl. But in the meantime, in that run, in that 17-game season, is that development, that preparation, that getting guys better on a daily basis. What we haven't seen, again, this is part of Vrabel and Rand, because that's leadership, right? The part in that is we haven't seen that. We have not seen these guys get better. Now, regardless of your evaluation process and how you grade guys and when you bring them in and you sign them, after that is about that development and preparation. And I can't say that we have seen that evaluation and preparation on a consistent basis with this group. So
with the offensive line.
With the offensive line. So offensive line coach, to me, there's a lot of conversation in there. There's some with the coordinator too, because you got to put those guys in position to help success. But then on the player side of it, there's a pride thing in there as well, a competitive standpoint. But you just might not be skilled enough to go against that guy across from you, right? So to me, this offseason, as we're talking about Rand and Vrabel, and they're in line and step, they're shoulder to shoulder, they're doing their evaluation. Now you're talking about your pro personnel scouting department, your college personnel scouting department. You're talking about your offensive line coach. What do you decide to do there? Your offensive coordinator. And I would throw your quarterback coach in there too, because you got to talk about protections and what your quarterback is able to do and what he sees. So it's not just Rand and Vrabel. So I think Vrabel, and I keep going back to this, has to make some decisions this offseason on his staff? Does he have guys in place that can continue to develop the people that they are saying have the ability to play in the National Football League? Because if that's not happening, then it's either it's not the individual coaching, or then you work your way up. It's not the head coach, not the GM. And so at some point, something has to give. And that's where we're at with it.
615-737-1045 for you to jump in. And we're coming off of an offseason, KD, too, where we had as much turnover on the coaching staff as we've had in the Mike Vrabel era. So it's going to included in that was Jason Ho-Tailing, promoted from assistant offensive line coach to offensive line coach. Keith Carter fired. He's now with the New York Jets. So that is going to be really interesting, just how much the Titans look in the mirror as far as the coaching staff is concerned and try to identify those problem areas. How much do they come back to those moves that were made a year ago, and how many more changes do we see? I mean, how likely is it there is a different offensive line coach in place next season when Jason Ho-Tailing was promoted this past summer? I don't know.
I mean, you've been talking about this for weeks. And again, I was surprised by Craig Ackerman, at least at that point in the season, right? I mean, I think a lot of people respect what's going on in the league. You get it. You understand. You got to do something significant to show that you are the leader of this team and you want to right the ship. So I get that from a professional business standpoint of it. But there was far more going on before those two plays on special teams to warrant the termination of a position or a coordinator, if you will, special teams coordinator. So with that being said, as you mentioned, you told me this, how many personnel moves there were last year coming into this year that didn't work after a tumultuous second part of last season. And now here we are again, 5-19 or 18, 5-18 since that point with the staff changes and personnel up in the front office, GM, all those things. Are those moves that you made, are they the right moves? Conventional thinking would say 5-11 season, or 12 or 5-11. Which I'm not going to say going to lose next week, but 5-11 season would say no, it didn't work. Specifically with the offensive line move. Now, I'm not one of the guy loses his job in 1 year, you get the opportunity to prove yourself. But if this is instant gratification business, what have you done for me lately? And the offensive line was probably the least productive as far as ability and everything else of all the groups, especially on offense. Then what's next? So it's either going to be offensive line or coordinator or both, in my opinion. I don't know because he just made these changes in last year.
615-737-1045. Anthony in Cookville is next on Titans Talkback. Hey, Anthony.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. So my question is, a year ago at this time, what were we saying? We were going into the offseason going, we need a left tackle. After the Daly debacle, we need a left tackle. Mm-hmm. We go into the offseason in the draft, and we go get an all Big Ten left tackle and move him to guard. So my frustration is, how do I trust this staff when I'm not seeing, the fruits of the work here? And look, I'm not about getting rid of Carthon yet. I think he deserves a couple more years. And I'm not even sure about Vrabel, to be honest with you, but it's frustrating when you knew you needed a left tackle last year, and you go draft an all Big Ten left tackle, move him to guard, then you get another left tackle who's from the Big Ten, and you think he's the starter in the NFL. Jaleel, is it Duncan? Jaleel Duncan?
Yeah, Jalen Duncan.
Jalen Duncan. I'm sorry. Thank you, guys. So what's frustrating to me is this is the second year. What are we saying? Well, we're definitely going left tackle. Didn't we just say that last year? So how do we trust that we're going to go left tackle next year? We can sit here and say that, trust me, this time we have to. We just moved an all Big Ten tackle, and I know it's 2 inches shorter on the arms with Skoronski and everything. Yeah. But how do I trust this coaching staff when they're giving me no reason to trust them right now? And I think you guys made a great point, by the way. And I'll let you go after this. I thought you made a great point about, I just don't think they're going to fire these coaches. They're not going to fire the offensive line coach. They're not going to fire, Tim Kelly after one season. And think about this. If Vrabel doesn't make it, if he starts off 2-4 next year and they do decide to get rid of him midway through the season, Bowen or Kelly as our head coach. So, anyways, guys, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Happy New Year's.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Same to you.
Well, and that's 2 years in a row they've drafted a guy that played tackle in college and moved him into the interior line. Although Radens was playing tackle today, but he's been kind of what I will say about Radens, which I do like before I finish my thought, is that he is becoming more of a Swiss Army knife of an offensive lineman. He plays all 4 of the 5 positions. He's becoming a guy that's going to have value. Because we have an injury at guard, move him to guard. If he has an injury at tackle, move him to tackles. He's going to be kind of that guy, and that's if he can perform at a respectable level. That being said, again, the metrics say if you see a guy and you're saying you need, to caller's point, you need a tackle, but you see the metrics of the guy and you see him, you envision him more as a guard, but don't sell the fantasy that you're going to get this tackle. Even though he was highly touted, highly rated, had a very great career as an offensive lineman in the Big Ten, but you envision him as a guard when going into it, like you said, you saw the vision of we need a tackle. So again, is that personnel? Is that coaching when you say, okay, we got enough, we got a guy that we can tackle, we move him to guards, that's a hole we need to fill as well. And then is it coaching to develop those guys within that? Now, I'm going to give Skronsky the pass. I mean, he's a rookie. The speed of the game's different. He's in a position in the sense that he hasn't played a whole lot of, considering he was a tackle in college, and he's learning. He's going to have an off season of just, it's not you don't go to class anymore. You just work on your physical fitness, your health, your strength, your knowledge of the game, your experience, all those things. I expect him to be better. I thought of all the things, he's a bright spot. I look forward to see him develop going forward just because of all the things I just mentioned. That being said, that left side, that left tackle, the second most important position in football after quarterback, right? Or I think they're the second or third highest paid in the National Football League. It's either quarterback, rushing in, left tackle, whatever it is. I think it's round in there, right? 2 or 3. That has to be a priority. If that's not, again, you say you got a top 10 pick and you got a potential perennial Pro Bowl tackle sitting there from whoever, and you go ahead and you draft a tight end or you draft a guard or you draft a defensive end, I think these fans will go ballistic just like he did, just like he said. I think they will go ballistic.
Andre Dillard, brought in to play left tackle last offseason, was as big of a swing and a miss as he could have had to fix that spot.
Considering the production, absolutely.
Right. I mean, he comes in and the production was worse than what it was with Dennis Daly, when, again, we were here a year ago today saying it can't get worse than Daly, whatever you do. And it did. So I do agree that this staff, Mike Vrabel, Rand Carthon, that whatever you want to call it, has done nothing to earn benefit of the doubt when it comes to addressing the left tackle position, right?
Absolutely.
The upcoming draft is very deep at the left tackle spot. It's very good at the top, and the Titans currently hold the number 6 pick in the NFL draft. You know, I know going into next week, people are going to be on not just playoff race watch, but draft watch, the movement into the top 10, into the top 5. The Titans look to have pretty firmly a top 10 pick, maybe a top 5 pick. How shocked would you be, as we sit here on December 31st, 5 months before the draft, if that pick is anything other than left tackle?
If it's not, that means you went in and say Trent Williams got released by the Niners. You went and spent $100 million on Trent Williams, and then you go something else. That's especially at that level, with that being the position of importance, and you don't need a quarterback, so you're not drafting that high for a quarterback. That unless a free agent is to that caliber, a guy who just coming off a Pro Bowl season or a perennial Pro Bowler, like I'm using Trent Williams because he's to me is the benchmark for left tackles. What's the guy in Dallas? He's also got the long arms. He's also kind of that next benchmark guy. I forget his name right now. But unless that guy gets released and you go ahead, I'm gonna spend the bulk of my money on this guy, then it has to be, from our vantage point, it has to be spent on that guy to protect who you're now calling your quarterback of the future in his second year going forward. It has to be spent on that. It has to. Again, There's a long time between now and April draft. There's a long time with free agency. We don't know who's going to be released and money, and they got all this money to spend. But if you don't, aside from going to get that guy that's a perennial Pro Bowler already in the National Football League, that's done. We don't have to worry about that. It has to be. It has to be the best guy in the draft.
Tyron Smith.
That's
who you're thinking of, currently on an 8-year, $97.5 million deal.
Yeah. You got to spend that kind of money on a veteran that you think at that level.
Laramie Tunsil of the Texans, highest paid as far as average annual salary goes, that $20+ million per year. So
where's Trent Williams at? He's like 3-4?
It was San Francisco, just below Laramie Tunsil. So the thing is, KD, when you look around the league and the best offensive lines in the NFL, we've talked about this, Philadelphia, Detroit, some of those teams that come to mind. The common trend with all of those is that their starting five were all drafted and developed by that franchise.
Yeah.
So the Titans went into last offseason with the challenge of cobbling together an offensive line unit to come in with a new starting five and gel. Didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest position group to address in an offseason when you don't have those pieces already in-house to develop. Yeah. So when you look at, okay, what do the Titans have in-house to build off of? You mentioned Skoronski at left guard, and he's had a rough few weeks.
Yeah.
And Peter Skoronski is playing 16 games, 17 games for the first time in his career.
He's beat up. He's banged up.
You're starting to see him hit that wall,
Absolutely.
it feels like. But I agree with you. You can't make any long-term determinations on Peter Skoronski's career before his rookie year is over. So you've got Peter Skoronski, Jalen Duncan, who you brought in, maybe can be a swing tackle for you. Nicholas Petit-Frere comes back. Aaron Brewer likely will be back on this roster next year.
I like Radon's value because he can spill you for different positions.
But obviously, it needs to be addressed. So you look at the left tackle spot, you look at the right guard spot, the right tackle spot. I mean, it's all going to be evaluated, right, this offseason. But we said even going into last offseason, hey, this thing's not going to be fixed in one offseason.
No.
And it didn't get fixed. It went backwards, right? The production, the situation got worse. So it'll be interesting with more resources and spending and a higher draft pick, how much more they can devote to fixing the offensive line.
You know, when you think about like offensive line and making moves for the Titans and the trend of the National Football League, and the Titans have done this, as we talked about having like people like Cunningham. LeBeau was here at one point or another as a consultant. We've seen people, Dean Pease, he was here as a consultant. Is there somebody out there? Russ Grimm was consulting at one point or another that could, if you're not going to quote unquote fire some of these coaches, do you bring in a consultant to help, another set of eyes, so to speak? Now that equates to more spending from Amy Adams, and I think she's committed to that if that's the way Vrabel wants to go. If he's like, no, I'm not going to let these guys go, I'm not going to let Tim Kelly go, I'm not going to do that thing, but let me bring in some guys, let me bring in quote unquote Dean Pease again to see if he can get his eyes on what's going on around here and help us. Or do I bring in like a Russ Grimm or Mike Munchak as a consultant to the offensive line? I'm just throwing that out there as another option, as a way of showing the fans that you're committed to getting to the pinnacle. That's the ultimate goal, right? Everybody wants to get to the Super Bowl, which next year is in Miami, I think. In 25, is it Miami? Or Tampa? It's one of them, I think.
I can't remember where it is next year.
But that being said, that's where you want to go. So if you're going to keep on and say, I'm going to try to keep some continuity with my staff, with my coordinators, with the moves that we had last year, because you made a lot of moves, how can you enhance your staff? Well, bringing in some veteran eyes, some guys like Swartzy who can help you, and they see something during the game that you might overlook and forget. And that's everybody, just having another set of eyes. And even Vrabel has a guy that he has that, hey, think about this, go for it on fourth down, think about this in this time. You know, everybody has that. So maybe that's the route they go next year.
New Orleans, in 2025.
New Orleans, that's right. You're right.
So
it is
next
New Orleans.
year, it's the road to New Orleans.
That's right, New Orleans.
615-737-1045. Okay, lines are loaded, so we're going to go straight to your phone calls when we get back. Titans fall 26-3 in Houston. They're 5-11 on the season, whether it's the offensive line discussion, anything you want to get into from today or the season as a whole. Finish out the year with us here. It's Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. Titans Talkback continues on 104.5 The Zone alongside Dr. Kevin Dyson. I'm Lucas Panzica. 615-737-1045. Final score 26-3. Texans over Titans at NRG Stadium. Titans fall to 5-11 heading into the regular season finale next week at Nissan Stadium. Titans Talkback is presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Okay, phone lines are heating up, so we go right back to them. 615-737-1045 as we bring in Jack in Nashville up next. Hey, Jack.
Well, all this about Vrabel, all I'd have to say is Vrabel looked a lot better with Dean Pease and Arthur Smith and different people looking over his shoulder. As far as the rest of this, it's got to stop. I watched that whole game, and the whole thing reminded me of a few times I've been hunting, and I winged something, and I had to track it down and kill it to put it out of its misery. It's just painful to watch. And until they get an O-line, I don't care if you put Jerry Rice and Joe Montana out there. They're going to get killed. It's just that's all there is to it.
Yep.
Thanks for the call, Jack.
I mean, offensive football is harder to be productive if you can't protect, you're not creating running lanes, all the things. You know, what's interesting, you watch kind of what teams are doing. They're making the Titans offensive line go mano a mano, man on man. So they're not able to a lot of times do combo blocking and double team get to the second level because they're pretty much going hat for hat. And they're losing those one-on-one battles a lot of times. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not all the time, but there's a lot of times you look at it and teams are going pretty much half for half, whether they walk up a backer or an extra guy on the edge or something like that, and the Titans are not winning those one-on-one battles.
615-737-1045. Mark in Clarksville's next. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, I'd like to have somebody explain to me why it's such a bad thing if Vrabel got another job as soon as he left here. It doesn't matter to us. If we're better off without him, who cares what he's doing? He's steadily gotten worse, really, since I think Arthur Smith left. We've just become a mediocre program, okay? And I don't understand. Who cares if he moves on and he gets a head coaching job somewhere else? Great. He'll make them mediocre, as far as I'm concerned. He's wasted Derrick Henry. I don't know why he can't get Derrick Henry in there on a third down. Of almost Derrick Henry's whole career, he won't let Derrick Henry play on third down for whatever reason. He should have had time to develop him into being an all-down back. There's no reason for him not to be. That was my point. And for the guy in Smyrna that thought that we're idiots for thinking we need to get rid of Smyrna and that he'll get a job right away, I think we know who the idiot is. You guys have a good day. Appreciate the show, man.
Thanks for the call, Mark. I guess the point in us talking about, Mike Vrabel gets hired tomorrow if he's fired today, is more to try and kind of indicate the value that this franchise has in Mike Vrabel.
Right.
And every time you and I, Katie, I don't want to speak for you, but every time we talk about Mike Vrabel and whether or not he needs to be fired or is going to get fired, the whole point of what we're saying is, listen, Mike Vrabel's your head coach in 2024. Yep. That's just what's going to happen.
Unless they do something shocking, which we don't anticipate.
Now, if you think the Titans if you think Mike Vrabel needs to be fired right now, then you believe that the Titans need to just pull the plug and just hit the reset button and let go of Rand and just start from ground zero, right? Because Rand Carthon was not brought in to be the general manager in charge of Mike Vrabel. He was brought in to collaborate with Mike Vrabel and to move forward together. It's almost like Vrabel got a clean slate as well for this new era.
I think you said that best. I think it's almost like he got a fresh start. Now, the timeline or time clock expiration date, I think is different. I think Rand's expiration date is a little bit past where Vrabel's is. I think now we're looking at Vrabel's as next year, aside from something tremendous happening like a dramatic turnaround, I think he has to, as far as his team, has to be productive and winning football games, or next year will be his last. I think Rand will get a pass, if you will, because he just got here. I think his timetable, his timeline is a little more extended than Vrabel's at this point. I do believe that.
I guess my only question with that, KD, would be, do the Titans view Rand Carthon as a guy that they see value in leaving all personnel decisions up to him? if when he was brought in, the objective was very clearly pair him with Mike Vrabel, the two will move forward together in this collaborative dynamic. Mm-hmm. Does it change the situation then if now suddenly Rand Carthon is your general manager and he's calling all of the shots? I don't know if that changes things for the franchise if they brought him in to be kind of partner alongside Mark Vrabel.
I think he'll be right in step with Amy Adams in the interview and process and guys, and that'll be the conversation of, hey, here's how we do things. We're a collaborative team, but ultimately I'm probably gonna make the final decision. But I think it'll be that conversation if it did come to that. I think you could still have that same dynamic, but now he gets to, quote unquote, make the decision on who is the play caller or leader of the team. If I'm talking about Rand, right? That he gets to pick his partner in crime, if you will, as opposed to inheriting Vrabel as he did.
615-737-1045. Rick in Clarksville is next. Hey, Rick.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks, guys. Kevin, I'm just curious about this. With these men bench pressing 300-400 pounds, can there be that much of a differential in linemen? That they can't get something. Was it 6 tries? Goal to go in 6 tries, and they couldn't get that ball in. And my second question is, if there's something maybe in the head of the guys, would it have been more psychologically beneficial to get the 3 points at that juncture, and give the guys a sense of momentum? I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks for the call, Rick. So he's talking about late second half, the Titans' only red zone appearance, goal-to-go situation. They go for it on 4th down. I'm going to pull up exactly what the score was at that time.
23-3, I think.
23-3, that's right. So the Titans went for it to try and make it a 2-possession game, and Rick is saying, why don't you just kick the field goal there, get the points to make it 20-6, or 23-6.
Yeah. At that point, the way the game was going, you were pretty fortunate they were even down there at that point. That's how I looked at it. Shoot, what do you got to lose at this point? You're already 5 and something at that time. You might as well. I like the call. Shoot, what we got to lose? Go for it.
615-737-1045. I am curious, KD, from your perspective, when you came into the league, your rookie year, if I'm not mistaken, was 8-8. Mm-hmm. Correct? That was the Oilers record when you came in, and then you guys go on that run, back-to-back 13-3 seasons. And then 2001, you go from that stretch
to 7-9
out of the postseason. And the Titans obviously are dealing now with back-to-back seasons of losing records and not in playoff contention. But this is the first time in the Vrabel era that the Titans are playing games with no shot at the playoffs in the regular season. How did the locker room dynamic change for you guys as a team that was used to winning, and suddenly you're 7-9, you're staring down the barrel of a postseason with no playoff football?
Yeah.
And what do you kind of have to depend on in that moment to keep coming back every week at practice and on game day?
Now, I'll say this, and just like Titans, there was a lot of games where if they'd gone a different direction, we're now talking about winning a division and making the playoffs. So, 2 games from flipping that around or being 9-7, 10-6 is a big difference, right? And I'll say this, the ills become bigger. Like anything, give up a touchdown pass becomes a bigger. Come on, man, you got all the stuff when you win that you kind of, I don't want to say if you overlook, but that you forgive a lot easier, becomes less and less when you're losing and you're fighting for wins, right? And I don't know if you remember, there was a conflict between a couple of defensive players on the bench. You may not remember, you were super young at that time, but there was a conflict between defensive backs on the bench because it was cold and they see the bench, and I was sitting here first, and the news, I think the Tennessean picked up on it in that conversation because 2 guys got into it on the scuffle. But that doesn't happen if you're winning games. So ultimately, you hope that you guys can band together and basically have that us against the world mentality and go out there and battle and still try to win games. But there's 2 different dynamics. You can look at that too, right? Is this a team that's solidified and they're still building a roster together and going in that direction, similar to what the Titans are right now, or to a team like ours, which was on the other side where they were dismantling the team, where guys were up making that run that were seemingly Blaine was leaving very soon. Mace, Mac, myself, like a lot of guys, Javon, a lot of guys starting to get dismantled right after that run. We had one more run. We went 11-5 AFC Championship game, and then pretty much after that, everybody was not everybody, but a lot of guys were gone. It was up for the next guy, the Drew Bennett's of the world, Justin McCarron's. I'm talking about receivers, but a lot of those who was a running back to replace Eddie, Chris. Chris came in, not Chris Johnson.
Chris Brown.
Chris Brown. Yep. From Colorado. He came in. So it became like a new era of guys. Then you had your run. And I think we're kind of in that mist right now. Fortunately for us, at least for the teams I was on, I was fortunate enough to not have one of those 3-13 teams or 5-11 teams. 7-9 was the worst I ever was a part of. You know, I was always in the playoffs. I was fortunate. Other than my first year and that year, every other year I was in the playoffs. So I was fortunate enough to say that. But it's hard, man. It's rough. It's hard coming to work week in, week out, and you're like, man, what are we playing for other than pride? And sometimes that's enough. Because you go out there and you put anything less than your best on that film, there's other 31 teams are watching. That GM up in the sky is watching you. All the different things, man. So you got to go out there and perform. It just sometimes it just doesn't click.
It's uncharted territory for a lot of guys on this roster. Certainly is for Mike Vrabel as the head coach. More of your phone calls when we come back. 615-737-1045. It's Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 1045 The Zone.
Look at that big old wall.
Week 17 in the NFL, not quite in the books. Some games in progress. Pittsburgh leading at Seattle 24-17, mid-third quarter there at Lumen Field. Denver up 10 over the Chargers at halftime. Broncos need to win to keep postseason hopes alive. Jarrett Stidham getting the start after the Broncos benched Russell Wilson. What a saga that's been in Denver. Stidham 12 of 22, 165 yards and a touchdown at the break. And Kansas City losing to Cincinnati 17-13, early third quarter. Chiefs have struggled lately, Kevin Dyson, but still control their destiny in the AFC West. A win today would get it done. And you talk about, last segment, we were talking about the dynamic in a locker room when a team that's used to winning gets eliminated from playoff contention and suddenly the losing starts to creep in, and it's just this uncharted territory. And you mentioned a dust-up between a couple of defensive backs on the sideline. For you guys back in 2001, as an example, a few dust-ups today, Chiefs and Bengals.
And you saw that last week with Kelsey and a helmet throwing. and
against the Titans, that's right.
Yeah, in the confrontation between him and coach. I mean, it just when you're accustomed to winning and then it's, I don't say it's never easy, but it's not as coming as easy as it once had. And then for somebody like Travis Kelsey, for instance, who's had a lot of success, well, now he has like 70 yards in the last 4 games or something crazy, and he's just frustrated, and that frustration gets amped up. So now you're searching for wins, and I think they lead the league in drops and all the things like that. So
he's got 1 catch today, 0 yards. Travis Kelsey. Pat Mahomes is 10 of 14, 79 yards, 1 touchdown to his running back, Isaiah Pacheco, as the Chiefs trail 17-13 in the third to the Bengals. Noon slate was nuts today. Baltimore, 56, Miami 19.
Nobody saw that. I knew Baltimore might probably win that game, but not like that.
Ravens lock up the 1 seed in the AFC. This was a battle in the first half, KD. I mean, it's 14-13 late in the second quarter. And it was all Ravens after that. They go into halftime up 28-13 and just did not look back. Lamar Jackson strengthening his MVP case, 18 of 21, 321 yards, 5 touchdowns to go with 35 rush yards.
I just don't see who takes it from him at this point. The person that was probably closest to him in second, he outperformed him last week.
Yeah, Brock Purdy's campaign ended with those interceptions a week ago.
Even if McCaffrey's your front runner, he outperformed him.
Dallas on Saturday winning in controversial fashion over Detroit 20-19. The Cowboys are still alive in the NFC East, and that's because, Kevin Dyson, the Philadelphia Eagles are playing their worst football at the worst time of year to be playing your worst
Again,
football.
You're talking about teams that are searching right now and all the whispers and all the things, and it's going to be a time. It's going to tell your story right now.
35-31, the loss at home to Arizona, giving up a 70-yard drive for Arizona to score a James Conner touchdown with 32 seconds left and get the 35-31 win.
Wow.
Philly now 11-5 going into the regular season finale against the Giants, who they had to escape on Christmas weekend. So that's certainly not a sure thing. A lot of divisions coming down to the wire, including the AFC South. The Titans are not a part of it. We mentioned off the top, Jags, Texans, Colts, all going into Week 18 at 9-7. So here's the situation. Titans can technically still play spoiler. Hosting Jacksonville at Nissan Stadium next week. Jags control their destiny. So despite not playing their best football, came into today on a 4-game losing streak, did Jacksonville. Won over the Panthers without Trevor Lawrence today, 26-0, just shutting down the Panthers offense. The Jags at 9-7 will win the AFC South with a win over the Titans next week, regardless of what else happens. Texans and Colts go head-to-head next Sunday. So if the Jags fall here next weekend, the winner between Texans and Colts will clinch an AFC South title.
Have they announced what time the game is yet?
They have not that I've seen. So that is not official.
Yeah.
It's not. We don't know. It's probably a noon kickoff Sunday. We don't know that for sure. We'll find out here probably the next 24 hours.
If I'm with the NFL and the drama, we're going to if we'll probably both be at the same time.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
but
they have to be both.
But
I think that's the biggest thing they want to avoid, right? A team knowing what they need based on that Week 18 result
exactly
on the same weekend.
Because we've seen that to the other side. We're like, well, I'm sitting everybody now. We already in.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
exactly.
This is exactly what the NFL wants. They want relevant football up to the very last minute.
They're getting it.
Yeah.
Did you ever take any pleasure out of playing spoiler in your playing days.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, as a player, I absolutely prefer to be in this position. If I'm Jacksonville, that's where I want to be. I want to be in a position where I control my destiny. All we got to do is do our job and win this game, and we're in. And now if you get to the dance, anything can happen. You get hot, you guys find a way to win and make some plays, you can have a chance to make a run. I just want to get in. So if I'm Jacksonville, this is where I absolutely want, whether I got to come here or not, it's on me. We win, we're in. And that's all I want.
Titans fall 26-3 in Houston today. They are 5-11 going into that regular season finale. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. 104.5 The Zone TV is where you can watch us. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. The F&M Bank chat is lively this New Year's Eve afternoon. Appreciate you guys ending your 2023 with us today. Back to the phones we go. 615-737-1045. Stan has been waiting patiently in Brentwood. Hey, Stan.
How you doing?
How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Hey, here's my opinion. It's worth what you pay for it. The first 20 NFL mock drafts I look at, okay? I love looking at that stuff. The first 20 I pulled up. The two tackles are in the top 9, every one of them. Okay? Alt from Notre Dame and the guy from Penn State. The guy from Penn State is in there probably 60% of the time, 1 or 2 picks ahead of Alt. I happen to love Alt a lot better leverage, so on and so forth. But anyway, so I say all that to say, I am 100% sure the Titans will screw this up and not pick one of those guys if they have a choice.
Hey, man, give him benefit of the doubt, man. You got to give him benefit of the doubt.
No, what? Why? From Andre Dillard? So they will screw this up. They will try to go tight end. They will do something to not go with the obvious, we got to have a 10-year pro type pick. So I'm very pessimistic about their ability to separate themselves from what makes the most sense. But if they don't pick one of those two guys, and I hope it's Alt, then I'm going to be very disappointed. I'd like to hear your opinion on that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the call,
I think a lot of people agree. You need a Brad Hawkins Taylor one guy who's going to be the cornerstone of your blind side, if you will, for a lot of years. Pro Bowler caliber, all pro, both of them all pro bowler caliber guys for a lot of years for this organization. And those two come to mind. There's been others, but those two definitely come to mind. Taylor at the end of his career was a little bit different player, obviously with the injuries and things like that, but he had a good career here. So if you can find a guy like that again, I think the fans would be elated. I mean, to say the least, I think everybody has that assumption that that's the way you go. And my only caveat to that is if you're able to get a perennial or already a guy who's established, a Pro Bowler that you know the quality that you're getting based on his production in the NFL.
Titans, as of today, hold the number 6 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. Overall, at the moment, they have 7 total picks.
And nobody would be upset with either one of those guys, I don't think, based on right now. Now, there might be somebody that shocks you and comes through and moves his name above one or the other. But you mentioned them two before the caller did. So,
you know, we've got 5 months of discourse ahead of the NFL Draft. We do this every year where there is a guy, and this is who they need to get. And if they don't go get this guy, then I'm done in December. And then we have Senior Bowl and the Combine and then all the news cycle that is the lead up to the NFL Draft. So there's still a ton of time.
Yeah.
There are the people that are going to say, I don't care, go get Marvin Harrison Jr., right?
Yeah.
There are going to be people that say, I don't care, go get so-and-so, despite the need at left tackle.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting.
That would be interesting. If Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, do you go ahead and pick him? Depending on what you did in the offseason again, I guess, right? But that would be interesting because then if you don't get him and he ends up being what everybody anticipates him being, then you're like, I didn't get him. So that would be an interesting dynamic too. But who's the head of the Titans right now besides Chicago, who right now locked down number 1?
Right, and that's because of what the Panthers have done this season. And the Bears obviously have that pick. So Carolina at 2-14 is basically locked in to that number 1 overall pick, which, as we said, belongs to Chicago. At this moment, Washington, who lost to San Francisco today, picks 2nd. New England picks 3rd. They lost today as well to go to 4-12.
They may go quarterback.
That's right. Absolutely. And we'll see if there's a new head coach contributing to that pick in New England. Arizona picks 4th. They won today. So the Cardinals, if they had not defeated the Eagles today, there's some upset Arizona Cardinals fans today because if not for that win, they would currently have the number 2 pick in the draft as opposed to the number 4 pick that they have because of that upset win. The Giants at 5-11 pick 5th. The Titans at 5-11 pick 6th.
So the 5 ahead of them, maybe Washington, but I'm not sure who their left tackle is. I don't think they have to worry. I think they're going to have, maybe, who knows, somebody's going to move up and free agency and all that kind of stuff plays. But I don't know if anybody ahead of them would take whoever the top 2 or 3 tackles are.
The discussion in Chicago will be about, is Justin Fields our guy?
Yeah.
And if he's not, you take a quarterback there. If he is, do you look at trading back? Do you go ahead and take Marvin Harrison Jr. to pair with Justin Fields? I don't know. The discourse in Chicago is going to be really interesting.
Dang.
Arizona, Kyler Murray, at least contractually, is their franchise quarterback. And Jonathan Gannon is sort of building that team up from scratch. So
I almost like being in that 5th, 6th spot. Just on what you just mentioned alone. Because if you're at that 1 or 2 spot, is these tackles graded as that number 1, number 2? Now, you might be able to trade down 2, 3 spots with, say, Washington or whoever is at 3, 4, or Arizona, and say, hey, I'm at number 1. You want number 1 to get whoever that number 1 guy is in this draft and go to 4. But 5, 6 is not a bad spot because I think based on what the Titans, what we assume their need is right now, if the season ends today and no free agency happened, based on that assumption, 5 or 6 is not a bad spot.
We just had the caller, I believe Stan it was, saying he's done. They don't go get one of those 2 guys at left tackle with that top 10 pick. That's it. And Brian in the F&M Bank chat says, wait till the 2nd round for a left tackle. 1st round, need a receiver, need an edge rusher. So that's just going to be, we got 5 months of this, folks. So let's try and save some of it. Titans fall in Houston 26-3 with 1 game remaining in the regular season. More of your phone calls when we come back. 615-737-1045. It's Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 1045 The Zone. It is Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone, and it's presented by Lee Company. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play should be to visit leecompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. Welcome back. It's Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone. Appreciate you guys hanging with us. A very happy new year to everybody listening. Hope it is safe, and hope you guys are able to ring in 2024 with some positivity. I know the Titans weren't exactly able to offer it today or this season, but the 26-3 loss to the Texans at NRG Stadium, that's why we're here, to provide some sort of therapy for the next hour and 10 minutes or so that we'll be on the air. That's Dr. Kevin Dyson, Titans legend. I am merely Lucas Panzica. Jackson Williams is our producer, and we go right back to the phone, 615-737-1045. Brad and Franklin is next.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you taking my call. I certainly enjoyed hearing your comments, observations. So I've got two observations and a question to put in front of you guys, football minds, this far. Observation about Vrabel. You know, he has an attribute, two attributes, loyalty and stubbornness. Loyalty toward some players and some of his staff.
Mm-hmm.
Stubbornness, he does not seem to demonstrate a willingness or an ability to change, deviate from his game plans. And that's okay if we're winning, but it's fatal. It's horrible attribute if we're losing as we are now. It just doesn't seem to embrace or see change. So, and the third piece I noticed among his hiring staff, he does not seem to be willing or able to hire somebody who he thinks may be smarter than he is.
Mm.
He had Dan Peace at one time, but and Dan was not the coordinator. But my understanding through the media, of course, that Vrabel kind of stripped Peace of that play calling, took it back to himself, and it concerns me when a head coach believes he has to be the smartest guy in the room. I think we're evidence of that more and more.
Hey, thanks for the call, Brad. Sorry, losing you a little bit on your phone line there. But I think point taken about Mike Vrabel and the way he's operated with his coaching staff.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair assessment. I think you look at what he's done, particularly on offense. He just continues to elevate the next guy with the most tenured experience on that staff, on the offensive staff. I don't know if I have to be the smartest guy in the room or not, but I can see why that would be assumed, especially on defense. But I said it earlier, that might be something I think fans would get behind if you don't go with a different coordinator or a different coordinators. I think people have been calling for both guys' heads at this point, but is bringing somebody with that experience that has some success in the National Football League that is an extra pair of eyes, whether it be on offense and or defense. I think people would get behind that if you had a Dean Pease or a Swartzy or something like that you brought in, even a consultant on the offensive line. I think people would get behind that, a veteran that has had some success in this league, whether it be a Russ Grimm or Mike Munchak or Bruce Matthews. I don't know, whoever they decide that may be able to help the situation.
We were talking about this off the air during a break today, that the Titans have had at this point 4 offensive coordinators in the Mike Vrabel era, from LaFleur to Smith to Downing and now Kelly. And the offensive philosophy hasn't necessarily wavered, right? In that run-first mentality with Derrick Henry. So I guess my biggest question, KD, is what does that look like if Derrick Henry is not on this team next season? Just how much of a change do we see away from what the Titans' bread and butter has been on offense, with Mike Vrabel as the head coach being kind of the common denominator with all of those play callers coming in and out?
And to me, it depends on who is in that backfield primarily. Has Tajay shown enough to be the number one primary ball carrier? So if that's the case, which we don't know, I don't know what's going to happen in free agency if Derrick Henry comes back at a lesser amount. We're just spitballing here, right? Say Tajay is the number one ball carrier. I think you got to look at the style of runs. Where is he successful in? He's not a power guy. I think he's more of a read, fill, gap type guy, which lends itself to more of a zone stretch type scheme. where he can stretch the defense, get them to overrun, and look for cutbacks. That is when he's been very successful. He does come downhill a lot. He has ability to make guys a miss, but I don't know. I think everybody in the National Football League and everybody in this room and everybody listening would agree he does not have the physique from our standpoint to be a 25, 30 carry a night guy. So there has to be a compliment to him. And what does that compliment look like? Do you have a thunder and lightning type compliment, meaning a more of a ground and pound, 4th and 1 type guy, or do you do kind of what the Chiefs have done when you got 3 or 4 guys similar in body type with different types of abilities, but you make running games around each of those guys? So that is kind of what remains to be seen. I think, and then the offensive line dictates a lot of that too. What are they able to do? Are they able to be more of a zone scheme? Because now you got to be able to move and get your body on people, use your hands, all the things. So there's going to be a lot of conversation going on if it's already happening, but especially in this offseason.
It's going to be interesting what kind of resources they devote to the running back position. You bring up the Chiefs, who spent a first-round pick on Clyde Edwards-Helaire in 2020 out of LSU. Well, the main focus of that rushing attack is not Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and health is a part of that as well. But Isaiah Pacheco is the focal point of their rushing attack. That's a 7th-round pick that on a whatever 7th-round pick salary basically led this team to a Super Bowl in that game against Philadelphia last year.
Yeah, and is his contract up? Because that's going to be interesting to see what somebody like him, what he garners as far as money. With Saquon, which I think is on a franchise tag this year. He signed a franchise thing for 1 year.
Pacheco was a rookie last year, so he'll have a couple more years.
He got a couple more years. Well, if he's 7th round, so he's got 3, maybe 4 years. More likely probably a 3-year deal. So he's got 1 more year left. I'm just out here trying to think: is there a potential free agent that can come in, and if Spears is not your starter, that guy come in and be your starter? What does that look like? Or do you consider Spears the starting guy? So now you got 2 second-year players in your backfield that replaced King Henry and Tannehill, and now you got Spears and Levis as your main guys. You got Skronsky as your guard, so they're all 3 of them going to the second year. There's your nucleus for the future. Now what? So now you get another young guy, also on the left side at tackle. So there's 4 guys that you would assume you're going to have for a long period of time.
Derrick Henry, by the way, 12 carries on the day for 42 yards. Certainly an improvement from 16 carries for 9 yards, like it was in the last outing against Houston at Nissan Stadium, but not quite the Derrick Henry we're used to seeing against the Houston Texans. He did surpass 1,000 yards for the 5th time in his career, only needed 28 to do that. Coming into the day, he got 42, as did DeAndre Hopkins with 7 catches for 72 yards, led the Titans in receiving. He needed 61 yards to make his 7th career 1,000-yard season, and he does so as well. Tyjae Spears, 6 carries, netted 0 yards rushing, but caught 4 passes on 6 targets for 29 yards. He came into today 4th among NFL rookies in scrimmage yards with 743, and that's all split pretty evenly in receiving and rushing.
Yeah, Again, we're making assumptions, right? We're not in the practice every day, not in the film room every day. Our assumption is his role, he's good fit for his role right now. 6 to 10, maybe 12 carries a game, 4, 5, 6 catches a game. So you get about 12 to 18, maybe at the most 20 touches a game, and utilizing that production that way. Get him in space, let him do some zone scheme, cutbacks, things like that. Let him use his explosiveness. That seems more his role in this era of football than being back there, 1st down, 2nd down, and 3rd down, just banging. That day is old. Derrick Henry is one of the last few guys, as we watch Najee Harris, he's one of the last few guys that are of that era that is the primary 25 to 30 carry guy a night game guy. It's just kind of the NFL's going away from that.
If the Titans don't bring back Derrick Henry next year, it's going to be because they chose not to, right? Mm-hmm. Not because they couldn't afford it.
Right.
The Titans have the most cap space in the NFL next year. Yep. Derrick Henry's not going to cost that much next year.
Yeah.
So it's going to be entirely up to this franchise whether or not they want.
Up to him too. Up to him too.
Sure,
He's got there's a pride thing in that too. As a player, it's hard. One of the last things to go is the mind, right? And you thinking your ability is still at an elite level. And I'm not saying he's not. I think he's showing some flashes. So before people get on me about that, what I'm saying is, as an athlete, that's one of the last things to go is your mind. You still think you can play at that level. So is he going to accept whatever offer comes his way from this franchise, if there is one that comes? And so he has some options too in this. Now, as we saw this past offseason, running backs in general don't have a whole lot of options. Saquon was up. My man in Las Vegas was up.
Josh Jacobs,
yeah.
And he NFL lead rusher last year.
Yes. Dalvin Cook. Trying to think who else moved around last year. And so from that standpoint, he doesn't have a whole lot of leverage for a running back anymore. So depends on who has value. And to say Washington Redskins, I'm just throwing a team out there, or Cleveland, who lost a couple of guys this year in injury, but say Washington Redskins, and they offer him a 3-year, $26 million deal, and the Titans say, hey, we'll give you 2 years, $10 million. Would he take the less money, stay here, stay put, and build on his legacy, or go chase the money? I don't know. But they're not paying backs right now.
How Not To on the F&M Bank chat, where you can hang out with us, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, says, I don't think they're going to, he says, I feel like Henry is gone, but I hope I am wrong. Brian says they need a big red zone back. Also says, or Ricky says, the Ravens, perfect spot for Derrick Henry. The Eagles as well, with the best offensive line in the NFL.
The Eagles, that's not going to happen. Swift is solidified that.
Sure. So it's going to be interesting. I think that's one of the biggest storylines to watch next year. Tyjae Spears' role in this offense, and a lot of that depending on whether or not Derrick Henry is here. Can Tyjae Spears become a game changer for the Titans offense? It feels like this season he's been more of a bailout player, right? He's been on third down. Just dump it off to Tyjae. He's going to make some guys miss. And he's had a nice rookie season. He's done enough to build up excitement.
He's
for
almost 800 yards total offense.
But what does that next step look like for Tyjae Spears, and how much does that depend on if Derrick Henry is here or not?
And I do believe he has a lot of value, and I think he is going to be a good football player for a few years in this league. But I think he has to have a compliment. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that's the day and age of what we're in. You got to have that compliment. I think that aside, I think you go back to the conversation of having that 6th pick. If somebody like Harrison Jr., one of the most dynamic offensive players in this draft, is sitting there at 5'6", wherever you pick, do you say, how many tackles are there? We might be able to get one in the second. What pick in the second round do they have? Does it still fall in line in the second round? They still got the 5th or 6th pick in the second round too? Something like that probably?
I believe so. I can look up their 2024 draft.
Do you feel
capital.
like you got your perennial Pro Bowler at left tackle in the second round if Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting there at 5 or 6?
It's a deep receiver class as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. Right. And that's going to be the narrative around him. So the Titans will have a high second-round pick as well. They do not have a third-round pick, and they will have a 4th, a 5th, and 2 7s.
And that's where you get your depth, right? But that 1st, 2nd, and even that 4th-round pick are probably key contributors early on, expected anyway. So if you're sitting there right now in the 6th spot, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting there, and the tackle is there, and depending on what you do in the offseason, I get, but do you just say, is he strike the lightning twice in a bottle type guy? His dad's a Hall of Famer. Is he going to be a Hall of Famer? Is it again that, I mean, right now he's trending that way, or do you solidify that line for the next, at least that left side, for the next 8 to 10 years and work with Levis, Skronsky, and whoever the running back may be with that guy?
Yeah, and how much does that depend on what you want this offense to look like philosophically in 2024, potentially without Derrick Henry in the backfield? 615-737-1045. Josh in Louisiana is up next. What's up, Josh?
Hey, guys. Real quick note on Henry. I was at the game today.
Hey, as soon as the game ended, he was the first one off the field. He didn't go midfield, talk to nobody. He shot to the tunnel, and he was out. All these people, he just looked like he's done and ready to be done with it.
Yeah.
And now all these people talking about Vrabel's problem, all this stuff. We've all been watching games. It's a personnel problem, okay? John Robinson put us in a bad spot with some of these draft picks, these deals. We still paying for that Julio deal. That's why we caught up with all this Ryan Tannehill money. Now, the one knock I will agree with Colin Bryan is Mark Vrabel's just he seems like he's too loyal to like these guys that are Vrabel guys, like Brewer, Mason Kingsley. These guys don't need to be on the roster. We need enough talented enough roster to bring in people to get rid of some of these guys. I mean, the offensive line been horrible, and we ain't heard nothing about Brewer, but he's been getting ran over all season. But Mike Vrabel keeps running out because he's tougher than a $2 steak. I like a lot of the free agents we brought in this year. The Dillard deal, he has a 3-year deal. But if you really look at it, it was a shot at a first-round pick, see if you could, and we could get it out of it this year without having big cap penalties. It's really a 1-year deal with kind of like in a 3-year deal. But so I think we got the top man Ron on top going to be doing well. I think everybody just need to calm down, let Mike get in, reset. But he does need to be like, hey, we friends. I love you, but I got to take care of business here. This is a business. We need to make some business decisions over some friendship. And that's what's causing, I believe, a lot of problems right now. Thanks, guys. Love the show. Enjoy listening to y'all after the game.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for the call, Josh.
Part of that is I get that people saying about the friendship and loyalty, but Craig Ackerman and him they're in line of step, and that was step one. That was a friend of his, and like he was the assistant head coach. People don't forget that fact. So that's saying something that you put your special teams coach as your assistant head coach, and he let him go in the middle of the season, towards the end of the season. One thing I want to comment on is Derrick Henry. That's a telltale sign. Like another one was when guys knew their journey was over at a franchise, you hope for better. Everybody wants to start end in the spot that picked them in your career, especially if you've had some success. But another one is how fast is that locker cleaned out the last game of the season, especially if it's a home game, and how empty is that locker. If the only thing left is what the franchise owns, which is shoulder pads and helmets and things like that, that's another telltale sign when you believe somebody knows their journey is over. And I think him saying that is, I think Derrick Henry understands the business aspect of it. It's probably making the assumption his time here is almost over.
Locker room cleanout day a week from tomorrow after the Titans host Jacksonville next Sunday. We're assuming it's next Sunday. The time not official.
I'm not talking your game locker. That happens. I'm talking about your practice, your day-to-day locker.
Right.
All the stuff you leave in, the earbuds, all the stuff.
Like your cubicle at work, right? Your home base.
Yep, pictures, all that stuff. You see how fast if that's cleaned out, I think he knows his time is up.
Time will tell with Derrick Henry. 615-737-1045. Cedric in the borough is next. Hey, Cedric.
What's up, fellas? How y'all doing, man?
Good. How are you, man?
Good, man. Hey, listen, man, there's no blue blood franchise that would keep Mike Vrabel on at the end of this season. Vrabel has made his money here and built this false bravado with his wins, his first 4 years here in a division that was a trash division. Now that we have competent coaches in our division with Steichen, D'Amico Ryans, and Doug Peterson down there, Vrabel cannot beat those guys, man. He can't do it. We got straight up bullied today by a team that we faced 2 years ago. We were out-prepared, out-physical. Whatever you want to say about that game, that's what you saw. And Vrabel is not the guy to get it done, man. 19-32, man, against teams that finish with a winning record. He has not beaten a coach that is a head coach in our division since none of those guys. He hasn't beaten a head coach, goes back to last year. He hasn't beaten Peterson. Obviously, he hadn't beaten D'Amico Ryans, and he hadn't beaten Steichen. And for all these people that call in and say, well, who are we going to get? Let me give you some names, man. Nobody ever heard of these guys. Nobody ever heard of John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, Andy Reid, Matt LaFleur, McVay, McDaniels. These are all guys that nobody ever heard of that are coming here and have these guys playing championship level football. Mike Vrabel needs to go, and Amy needs to trust Rand to go out and bring us into the new era of winning Titans football, man. Happy New Year to y'all.
Happy New Year, Cedric.
It would be interesting to see. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen next year, but it would be interesting to see what the direction Rand would go. And again, I think some of that depends on the emphasis on where you see the value or your franchise. And right now, it would seem the value would be in the hands of Levis. And you got to solidify the offensive line. So with that being said, if you went in a different direction, say in 2025, because we believe he'd be back in 2024, if say they did, I mean, I think Vrabel understands the business of it, and he knows he's under a 1-year microscope for next year. Say you did, I think you look at offensively, from my standpoint, you're looking for an offensive-minded coach, because the new pitcher or the new face of your franchise is the quarterback, Will Levis, right? There's no running back to contend with some of that glory, because with Derrick Henry is going to be gone. Because even with Tannehill, he was the quote-unquote quarterback of the franchise. He's always had Derrick Henry to kind of take away some of that expectation, right? And Levis doesn't necessarily have that. It's all him next year. Like, you're the face of the franchise. So you have to get somebody that's mindful enough to develop him and help him be successful. So what's out there and he mentioned former coordinators that have had success, McVay, LaFleur. I forgot some of the guys. He
mentioned Harbaugh. Made his career in
Reid.
Special teams, right, before getting that opportunity.
Yeah, Andy Reid was a coordinator for a lot of years. And there was another guy he mentioned, I forgot. But all that to say, you're seeing a lot of these coaches now, these younger coaches, McDaniel and Stefanowski, a lot of these guys are calling their own shots as well, which is not typical of what Vrabel is, a CEO-type head coach overseeing the whole program, where these guys are embedded and invested in one side or the other. Most of them are offensive coaches who are calling their offensive plays. We even saw the Cowboys. He even went back to calling his own plays and invested in there. He's like, if I'm going down swinging on my own accord, not somebody else that's not calling plays. And he's had a lot of success this year calling his plays again. So that would be interesting to see what they decide as far as the emphasis for what we assume is the face of the franchise is Will Levis going forward.
615-737-1045. Man, it's interesting the way Cedric said that. I had not thought about that, KD, that Mike Vrabel has not beaten an acting head coach in the AFC South. Winless against Doug Peterson, Shane Steichen, and D'Amico Ryans as the Titans get ready to host the Jags next weekend.
I mean, they're great on wins and losses, but you're graded within your division too.
615-737-1045 for you to jump in. It is time for the Kroger Sacks for Cash. Tonight, the Titans had one quarterback sack, courtesy of Harold Landry. For the season, Kroger's donation to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee now stands at $5,600, courtesy of that one sack tonight. Every time the Titans sack the opposing team's quarterback, Kroger donates $100 to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee from Kroger. Through its Zero Hunger, Zero Waste plan, Kroger is committed to ending hunger in our communities. So a double-digit sack season for Harold Landry, KD, moves him to 10.5 on the year. And Mike Keith said this during the Titans radio broadcast, and I couldn't believe it. The Titans are the only team in the NFL to have two players that have hit double-digit sacks this season.
Isn't that crazy?
It's Harold Landry and Danico Autry. That's right.
And neither one of them probably going to make the Pro Bowl. And both of them have been quiet, by the way.
Yeah, Autry 11.5 sacks.
Yeah.
Career high.
And Landry, and they said this on the broadcast, he has more fourth quarter sacks than anybody else in the National Football League. He now has all his sacks coming in the fourth quarter. Where you at, man? We just rushed you to the fourth quarter. Where you been? But that's remarkable to think about, that he's in the fourth quarter. He's getting his production, but neither one of them probably gonna make the Pro Bowl. I'm pulling for Autry. I think he's been one of the more consistent players for the Titans each week in, week out, even without Big Jeff. I was pulling for him. What about T.R. Tart over there getting tackled for loss today too? That was ugly to see. Never mind, it's a whole nother conversation. But But yeah, man, kudos to those two. We can find bright spots again. We talked about it. D Hop and Derrick Henry both topping 1,000 yards this season, which nobody would have thought that way this offense has been going.
Well, there's a flip side to every bright spot, right? Because if you had told somebody in August, hey, you're going to have 2 double-digit sack players on defense, going to be the only team in the league that does that. You're going to have a 1,000-yard rusher again in Henry. D Hop's going to go for over 1,000 yards. What do you think is going to happen this season?
Division leaders.
Right.
That's all you're right. And that's why numbers don't tell the whole story all the time.
615-737-1045. This is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Titans fall in Houston 26-3, taking your phone calls to ring in the new year. Talking Titans, the upcoming offseason, today's game, whatever is on your mind. We're talking to you next. Phone calls on the other side on Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 104.5 The Zone. The final day of 2023, and we ring in the new year with you on Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone, presented by Lee Company. Alongside Dr. Kevin Dyson, I'm Lucas Panzica. Jackson Williams is our producer. Appreciate you guys hanging with us on your holiday weekend. 26-3 was the final as the Titans fell to 5-11 in Houston, getting swept by the Texans on the season. We go right back to the phone. 615-737-1045. Josh in Hendersonville is next.
Hey, gentlemen, just wanted to say Happy New Year. Appreciate you taking my call. Just had a question about, coming into this year, a little bit of a fuss was made about moving to turf there at Nissan Stadium. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about injuries this year in relation to that move to turf, and if we think it's impacted performance on our offense at all. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Josh.
Data works out. I mean, the turf that they're using is supposedly the most closely related to natural grass. I think I've been down there a couple times. I actually, of all the synthetic grass fields that are being used, I like it best. It's got a different baseline than the black pellets and sand. They're using coconut shavings, and I forget the other thing they're using. And it seems to have a similar give that grass gives you. But the other franchises don't. They're the only ones that have it. So the others have the other turf, as we're watching Seattle and some of these others right now that use that other synthetic grass. And I don't know. I think injuries are up in NFL over the last 2-3 seasons anyway. Part of it might be the grass. I think some of it is the inability to hit and condition your body in training camp as it once were. I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
Injuries haven't been nearly as much of a talking point this year for the Titans, obviously.
As they should, but,
right. The list is long of Titans issues, injuries, not exactly at the top of them. That number's gone up now at the end of the season. As soon as they were eliminated from playoff contention, saw a lot of guys start to get shut down, placed on injured reserve. But it does feel like they've been less plagued, right, by constant injuries this season. I know Tannehill goes down, and it's the same ankle injury, and offensive line issues have certainly led to a lot of that. Levis goes out today in the second quarter. Where were you on that, by the way, KD? The conversation of just shut Will Levis down, preserve the future of your franchise and your rookie quarterback behind this line, or no, he needs every rep he can get. Obviously, he leaves the game in the second quarter, does not return. But where did you stand on that going into today?
I lend to the latter. I think he needs every rep he can get. I mean, I think, yes, this season, obviously, meaning you're not in playoffs, but he needs to see these defenses and be able to have stuff to evaluate. Give yourself as much of a sample size as you can going into offseason to evaluate yourself to get better. Is a 7, 8 game, 9 game sample size the best? No, because now you get to see, okay, this is how I was the first time against Houston. This is the second time around, and what could have I done better? I just, nothing replaces experience. Film study, all those things aside, man, nothing replaces experience. And I'm one to think, even with the offensive line woes, the offensive line woes didn't change from the first time he got there to the last time. They've been there, so you got to play them.
We'll see what that looks like going into next week against Jacksonville. The official ruling was foot for Levis today. Going into the week, it had been ankle, and he was back as a full participant after missing the Seattle game at Nissan Stadium a week ago. So we'll keep an eye on Will Levis throughout the course of the week as far as his health is concerned. 615-737-1045. Jeremy in Nashville is next.
Hey, Happy New Year, guys. I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. Thanks for taking my call. I feel like going back to the first of the year, after they promoted Tim Kelly from within that offensive scheme last year, in my opinion, nobody involved in that scheme last year should have had a job. And then when they gave him the position and he was on there talking about we're going to try to look complex without being complex, if that didn't sound doomed from the beginning, I don't, I just didn't get that. And how, fans keep thinking that Vrabel shouldn't be held accountable to some extent because he's the one that keeps hiring these guys. I mean, he has to co-sign on this stuff. It's not like the administration of the team is forcing, like, hey, these are your coordinators, deal with it. He has a say in who they're bringing in to be the offensive coordinators, and maybe they're the ones that are smoking those coconut shavings that are on the field you're talking about, Coach Dyson. But,
and by the way, it was coconut shavings and cork.
There you go, cork. Thanks for the call.
You said coconut shavings.
That's right. Thanks for the call, Jeremy.
It is coconut shavings and cork. Somebody, Jordan on the chat said that, man. Appreciate that. I get it. I mean, we keep beating the dead horse, man, but I get what the fans are saying. And I think what we've been trying to relay is Vrabel and to me, and I don't want to speak for you, this is a pivotal offseason for him in relation to his staff. Now, he did make some pivotal moves last year. They just didn't work for whatever reason. When I mean didn't work, production didn't work as far as wins and losses. So this is a pivotal year in his career as a head coach, specifically for the Tennessee Titans, to what his future is. So to me, if you are going to keep the staff intact, because we know consistency helps with anything. Like you're trying to lose weight, be consistent, right? It's just like everything. You're trying to win, be consistent. But how do you enhance what hasn't worked? If you're going to keep the staff intact and not make a whole lot of changes again like he did last year, how can you help that? Well, bringing in an extra set of pair of eyes that can help you, or whether it be offensive line or offensive coordinating, whether it be defensive line or defensive coordinating, having people, as he has done in the past with Dean Pease and with Swartzy on the defense side of the ball, that can help and maybe help these coordinators or help the staff in game time situations that they can be productive. But again, as you see people in the chat, like, let everybody go. I just don't see that happening right now.
Yeah. Well, we take these calls and they're often split, right? It's on Vrabel. You have to move on for Mike Vrabel, and then we've gotten plenty today. This is a personnel thing. This goes back to John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, and Rand Carthon need to build out their roster.
Yes.
A year from now, the John Robinson argument continues to take more and more of a back seat, right? It dissipates with time. So if we're sitting here on December 31st, 2024, about a ring in 2025, and these results are similar, then the conversation gets a lot simpler, right, about who is accountable for it. And the Titans are giving Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon every opportunity, and they've got every opportunity, KD. They've got all the money they want to play with, and they've got 7 draft picks. They have every resource that they could possibly have, almost, to rebuild and supplement a roster moving forward. They're going to get the opportunity to do that, is what we believe. So
you're saying there's no quote unquote built-in excuse.
Right.
New GM, new staff, injuries, the old GM picking the players. There's no built-in. Now you got cap money, all the things. There's no built-in excuse for lack of production next year. Is what you're saying.
Right.
Yep.
And when it comes to Mike Vrabel, then that's the conversation we'll have. A year from now, the results are the same. There's no question about who the burden falls on.
Do you think if the season is going similar to what it went this year, meaning they're 2-7 and whatever, does Amy Adams make a mid-season move?
I mean, I think she showed us with the firing of John Robinson that blindsided everybody, right? Just for that to happen in the middle of on Tuesday after a Week 13 or whatever it was game in Philadelphia, that anything is on the table when things bottom out in that way.
That one was, she got slapped in the face with that one.
Yeah, it was coming off of an embarrassing day, getting blown out by the Eagles, A.J. Brown having a day, Eagles fans rolling around in it. Yeah,
that one was like, wait a minute. That was like, you're not the guy, because had you been the guy, that number 11 wouldn't be sitting over there embarrassing us right now. You see what I'm saying? That was like, I got slapped in the face with this one. That was kind of like, I gotta make a move. If it's not that obvious, I don't know. Again, they seem to have a very good working relationship, but business is business, and you got to stand on it. And she's now the person making the decisions for the organization, and she's gonna have to stand on business if it's similar to this year.
The pressure will be heightened on Mike Vrabel going into 2024.
Absolutely. And he's well aware of that too.
Yeah. And the pressure will be heightened on a lot of players going into 2024, including Traylon Burks. Kevin Dyson knows what it's like to be a first-round pick of the Tennessee Titans and what comes with that. So we're going to get KD's perspective on Traylon Burks, where he's at in his Titans career. On the other side, more of your phone calls as well. 615-737-1045. It is Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 1045 The Zone, after the Titans fell in Houston 26-3 to the Texans to fall to 5-11 on the 2023 season. Home stretch, Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone, presented by Lee Company. 615-737-1045 is how you can jump in. Titans fall in Houston 26-3. They are 5-11 heading into the final week of the NFL regular season. Talking to Dr. Kevin Dyson about it. Jackson Williams is our producer. I'm Lucas Panzica. KD, you were a first-round pick of the Tennessee Titans in 1998. You know what comes with that label. Traylon Burks, first-round pick of the Tennessee Titans, is currently in his second year with the franchise. Second play from scrimmage today. After a 4-yard run by Derrick Henry, setting up 2nd and 6, Titans go deep. Burks down the seam, has some separation. Levis puts it on the money. Traylon just can't quite hang on. Kind of combats the ball a little bit as it's coming down, just can't hang on. And from there on out, Traylon Burks on the day was targeted 2 more times. He ended up with 2 catches for 11 yards. But coming into today, KD, Traylon Burks had 14 catches on the season. And we talked about it being a big year for him going into training camp to show that he can be available and productive consistently, something he wasn't able to do in 2022. It happened in spurts. There was a flash, right? Green Bay on Thursday Night Football, but not consistently. And it's kind of gone in the opposite direction this year, right? As far as the availability. If he plays next week, he will have matched the amount of games that he played in 2022 with 11. So he will be equally as available, although there are some semantics there that there was a game he played where he got 10 snaps, right? Because they're just working him back in, isn't really able to impact it. But last season, Burks, 33 catches, 444 yards, 1 touchdown, playing in 11 games. This season, Burks playing in 10 games with 1 still to go, 16 catches, 221 yards, no touchdowns. What have you made of what we've seen from the Titans' first-round pick at wide receiver this year?
Well, it's hard because the sample size is only 22 games. Of numbers, and
which is part of the problem in and of itself,
right? And so it's hard. And again, I said it a minute ago, experience, it's hard to replace experience. I think the expectations of him and himself and the fans are up there because of where he was picked, and so again, with the offense and the struggle this year alone, with the injuries, the struggle, all the things, this is one of the most heart-wrenching players over the past 2 years that I can relate to, because I was unfortunate enough to have a lot of injuries. I didn't have to the detriment of him. Mine was play a season and get hurt, play a season, get hurt. And so I didn't get to get off of get off that springboard, if you will. So I get it from that standpoint. But what he's got to understand is, especially in what's going on right now, and getting the few opportunities that he has. When you have an opportunity like today to make a play, and you don't know if you're going to get another one like that, and he didn't, right? I think he had, 4 or 5 attempts today, but not 6. What did he have?
Burks,
three attempts
targeted
today,
3 times, yeah.
But nothing vertical like today, like that. You gotta reel that in, because if you make those plays, regardless of all the injuries and all the different things, the times you're in there doing out, people tend to remember that. Making plays, making vertical plays. Kenny Britt, myself, Kendall Wright, some of these other guys have been first-round draft picks. We tend to remember their big play moments because we saw their ability. And that's the thing with Traylon is we haven't seen enough of what he was drafted for, which is his supposedly big play ability. And so today was no opportunity. It was like, okay, maybe going forward, we got something from a big play ability standpoint. And that's to me is where he's going to be the most evaluated and crucified over, is we haven't seen a lot of big plays out of him.
I'm just so curious to get your perspective on it, too, when it comes to the pressure that he faces going into year 3. And when I look back at your career, your rookie year in 98, and the jump that you took in your second year, where the production goes up, and then the Super Bowl run and the Music City Miracle, and you obviously playing such a key role in that. And then 2000, your third year, injuries played a role, right? You only appeared in 2 games. What do you remember the discourse being going into your 4th year as a Titans player, as a first-round pick, coming off of an injury-riddled season? Kind of what were you feeling just from a pressure perspective personally going into that year where obviously you took another big jump as far as production and had your best year as a Titan?
I did. And like that from year 1 to 2 was a big jump because I became a full-time starter and I was on the field.
Right.
And then year 2 to year 3, we got a new coordinator in Heimerdinger, and he pretty much told me, you get ready. You get paid to play receiver. You go, I'm about to feed you. And if you look, that second game, when he told me that, I had a 100-yard game, touchdown, the whole 9 against the Chiefs. And then I got hurt right before we played the Steelers. Well, then that time, and then that year, that's when Derek Mason became the great player that he was. He got the opportunity. He stepped in and became a Pro Bowler and had a great career. But that next year, I had one of my best statistical years as well. And that, to me, was because I had a coordinator that had trust and faith in my ability. And I was able to be on the field. The only time I wasn't "quote unquote" productive was because I tore my knee, tore my Achilles, tore my hamstring. I had those major injuries, which sucked. But I mean, you can't do nothing about it now. But other than that, I was trending in the right direction. And so all that to say is, for him, the thing is being on the field. You see the ability. The time for him is he's got to be on the field. I was injury plagued. He's injury riddled. And there's a difference. Plagued meaning I completely tore my knee, like ACL, MCL, meniscus, PCL, all of it. I tore my knee. Then I ruptured my hamstring. Didn't even know you can tear your hamstring off the tailbone. Then I did that. Then I tore my Achilles. That's injury plagued. Those cost you the whole year.
Yeah.
His was he's injury riddled, hamstrings, back, all the little injuries that keep you from being productive. So he can never get into a rhythm with the offensive coordinator, with his quarterback. And that's a big thing. But by the time you get plugged in, they've established some sort of rapport. D-Hop has a rapport. Moore has a rapport. A lot of guys have their rapport. Akine had a rapport. And he didn't necessarily have a place to fit in, even though he supposedly was going to be the number 2 guy. But then he goes down. He doesn't necessarily have a place where he fits in. What is his role as far as this offense is concerned? And so for him, it's about health. I don't know if he has to lose weight and keep his weight down some. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I mean, he's always been a bigger guy in size, but like somebody told me, it was Darryl Lewis told me, as you get older, get lighter, because as you get older, it gets harder to keep the weight off. So try to get lighter. And basically what he's saying is, what you come in the league at, you try to play at that weight as long as you can, because it becomes harder. And then health becomes an issue. So I don't know, man. I'm rooting for the guy because obviously, for obvious reasons, the parallels as the connection that you said. But mentally, it's rough because the ability you have, and you can do something, but something always pulls you back from being able to take that next step. And that's a frustrating feeling, especially in a business where you're being evaluated by family, friends, random people, front office, peers, people in your draft class, your teammates, people making decisions. It's so much pressure every week that you're trying, because you know what you want to do, and then every week you got all these people telling you what you can and cannot do, and why they shouldn't have drafted you and should have drafted somebody else, and all the different things. And he's thinking all that. And so you have a play like he had it today, people tend to forget some of that if you make that play. Now he's got to do that over and over and over again, continue to get better and start making plays over consistently. But once he does, then people won't think about these first 2 seasons if he can start being productive from here at this point on. What's he, 5-year deal, I'm assuming? So he's got 3 years left?
I'll look up the exact specifications of Burks' rookie contract. But obviously that first-round pick tag that you had as a Titans player, and then for Burks, KD, you're the guy that was brought in to replace A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Right? Who was on a track to become the best receiver that this franchise has ever had.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, just human nature, it feels like that has to play a part just mentally. By the way, 4-year, $14.3 million deal. Right. Just human nature as someone that did not have the physical or competitive edge it took to be an NFL player by a long shot. But I just feel like it's human nature to have that weigh on you in some way.
Absolutely.
Like, how do you avoid that as a player?
You can't, man. There's a lot of doubt going there, and pressure every offseason. There's every week, every game. I remember there was a game, man, when Mace went down, and I was in my contract year. It was against the Redskins, and the pressure I put on myself that game, like, I got to have a big day. Dropped the touchdown because I'm thinking, I gotta make this catch. I'm not even thinking about being in the moment of the game. I'm sitting literally thinking, I got to show out because Mace is out instead of just playing in the moment.
You wonder if Burks is dealing with some of that right now, just with the year that he's had.
I guarantee you he is. He hears the whispers. He hears the whispers, whether they're real or not. And that's the thing. They might not even be real, but to him they are.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, so obviously they are there, right? And you try not to pay attention. I wasn't one to sit there and read the paper and sulk unless somebody brought it to me and all that kind of thing. I put enough pressure on myself for everybody because I wanted it more than any fan wanted, any coach wanted, any teammate wanted. I wanted it more than them, and he's the same way. And so absolutely he's feeling that strain, that pressure. He wants to be productive. I guarantee you after he dropped that ball, man, he was thinking about that drop for a long time, for a very long time, guaranteed.
That's Kevin Dyson. I'm Lucas Panzica. This is Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045 for you to jump in. Back to the phones. Dylan is in Antioch up next.
Hey, guys. Thank you for taking the call. I didn't watch any of this game today. Played 18 holes of golf, lost some money.
Nice. How'd you play?
Oh, God. No, I didn't have any pars. But, okay, so I think there's this notion among Titans fans that Derrick Henry may be kind of like lucky or something to come back here, to play for the team again and get another contract. But if I'm Derrick Henry, I don't see it at all like that. If I'm Derrick Henry, first off, I want to win a Super Bowl. Second off, I'm thinking about, the Hall of Fame, getting my numbers up. And I know that I'm not going to do it behind this line at all. So I just don't see any reason why Derrick Henry would want to be here next year, even though, he's my favorite Titan, CJ, Derrick Henry, love those guys. But I do not see why Derrick Henry would want – so, even if a team offered him a slightly lower number, a Super Bowl contender, if I were him, I'm thinking, I can get better numbers, play for a Super Bowl, if the Titans offer more money, I don't see why I would want to come back here. So, Dr. Dyson could probably talk on this better than, anyone, but I just want to take your comments on that, and I'll hang up and listen. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, again, pride, right? We all believe it's hard to see anything else than I'm still at an elite level. I still can do this. I think that's why I have a lot of guys have a hard time hanging up the cleats, right?
Henry, by the way, turns 30 in 4 days.
Right. And he's still productive, had a 1,000-yard season. So in his head, if we get offensive line and little things go a different way, I'm still 1,000-yard back, which very well may be the case, right? He's still 1,000. Obviously it is because he's still 1,000-yard back with double-digit touchdowns again. Perennial Pro Bowler, probably going to a Pro Bowl again. So from his standpoint, I can see that being part of that conversation. That's that pride aspect of an athlete, right? I still think I have the ability. I still can be where I was just 2-3 short years ago, right? To a certain degree, right? However, I think he also is on the business end of this conversation where he benefited from the business end of the conversation when he was sharing the load and was the backup his rookie year. Then they let him go, and then Marco Murray, and they let him go, and then he became the man. But now it's to that point where he's the aging running back. Money value, do you feel like you are of that value to get another multi-year contract? And how does that multi-year contract structured? How much is in it? There's backs like Saquon Barkley, who are about the same age-ish, that is also probably going to be available. There's probably going to be a couple cuts. I don't know where Alvin Kamara is at with his contract. I know he just got a deal, but what do they do with him in conjunction to his production and injuries? There's a Dalvin Cook, I think, is going to be released again. I don't think he's going to be. I think he's going to be available. Do the Titans go after somebody like that? Ezekiel Elliott, I think, will be available again as well. I think, regardless of his contract, I think he's going to be out there. They're going to make some cap space. So there's going to be some backs of his era, that late 20, early 30-year-old back, that given the right circumstance where they share production, that the Titans will be interested in. I think Derrick Henry's going to have to either humble himself and come back here for a lesser amount, which we both agree that's probably not going to happen, or go to a lesser role at another franchise. I don't know of a franchise for his ability and skill set where he's going to be a primary ball carrier, meaning 20, 25 carries a night guy. I don't know if there's not a team that really does that other than the Titans right now. Giants, maybe, but Saquon, what's he averaging right now? He's right about 250 carries this year, probably just under it.
And the Titans have gone away from that.
Yeah,
this year. I mean, Derrick Henry, in terms of carries, I'm trying to find how many times this season. I mean, off the top of your head, KD, how many times this season would you guess Henry has had 20 or more carries in a single game?
I'm gonna say 3.
4.
4. And I think Christian McCaffrey is leading the league in carries, and he's right around 300, just under 300. I think Derrick Henry was like second or third, right around 250, 260. So
he's got 261.
261
after today.
After today. So that's still a lot of touches, but at this point last year or maybe year before, he was sitting there like 320, 325.
Yeah.
So that's a significant drop.
615-737-1045 for you to jump in. About 15 minutes to go here on Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company as we get to the Eurofix look ahead. Let me remind you that Eurofix repairs everything European that you drive and below dealer pricing. ASC certified technicians, a local company that has serviced Middle Tennessee for over 2 decades. Visit EurofixOnline.com. Next week, the Titans head back home, the regular season finale at Nissan Stadium, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. They'll look to avenge a 34-14 loss in Jacksonville. That was back in Week 11. Today, the Jags were without Trevor Lawrence due to a shoulder injury. They blanked the Carolina Panthers 26-0, and that game was never in question as Jacksonville outgained Carolina 317-124. And they pick off Bryce Young. They hold him to 112 passing yards. They hold the Panthers as a whole to 57 rushing yards. Big day for Trevor Etienne. 16 carries, 102 yards to go with 2 touchdowns. Jacksonville, as we said, controls its destiny. Win and take the AFC South again against the Tennessee Titans for a second consecutive year.
It'd be hard for the Titans. I mean, they've already committed to a lot of guys to the IR. Depth, offensive line, unless it gets dramatically better between now and next week, it's going to be a rough one. You know, I guess we'll see what the injury report says. I think everybody's idea of sitting Levis and just get ready for the next year, that might be of question. Like at this point, I tend to agree. I think he should play, but I also understand the other side of it too. Tannehill, it's probably if he's the starter, which he might be, it's a 1-game audition for him, for whoever else. We were talking off air. I thought Washington Redskins might be an interesting spot for him, landing spot. Him and Sam Howell, that might be an interesting competition at training camp. Derrick Henry, again, the way it's trending with the National Football League and even from his production this year as far as intentional production, like you said, only 4 times with 20 carries or more. That's intentional, right? It's like you're giving other people opportunity, more reps. Even with all that, it'd be hard pressed for me to see them beating Jacksonville next week. Now that aside, that being said, we've seen crazier things in the National Football League. They come out there and put up 30 points and beat them by 2 scores.
We'll see what happens with Trevor Lawrence and monitor his progress. Again, didn't play today. Or if C.J. Beathard comes back to his stomping grounds. That's right. BGA Wildcat C.J.
Granddad,
Beathard.
I loved him.
17 of 24 today was Beathard, 178 yards, a rating of 92 in the Jags win over Carolina. So we'll see if we get a Levis versus Lawrence matchup, part 2. Got Levis versus Stroud today, but didn't last very long. We did not get it the first time out as Case Keenum led the Texans to that overtime win here at Nissan Stadium. What'd you think of C.J. Stroud, by the way, as today he surpassed Mac Jones for the 5th most yards by a rookie quarterback in his first season.
Really?
That's right. It needed 171 yards, finished with 213 yards, 24 of 32 on the day with 1 touchdown pass.
And 2 less games because of the injury. I really like the kid. He seemed to have command of the offense. He seemed calm, relaxed, confident, had a great understanding where to go with the football, didn't force anything. Haven't seen him play a whole lot, but the times I have, that seems to be kind of the consistent trend with him. He doesn't have like a whole lot of forced throws and mistakes that he makes, and that's a lot for a rookie. It seems he's wise beyond his years in a lot of respects. And I know Carolina's looking at that. They had a chance to take him, and who knows if he'd been the same way if he was in Carolina as he is now. But whatever it is there, and the coordinator and the head coach with the Nico Ryans, but he seems to have a good sense of who he is and what the offense wants out of him, and the sky's the limit for that kid. And I think this division alone, with Levis being next year, we got 4 super young quarterbacks next year vying for that top spot. That's going to be an interesting matchup or battles for the next however many years between these 4 quarterbacks in this division, because it's no longer just Luck's division, or just Manning's or Manning and McNair or
Henry's
or Henry's. It's these 4 young guns, man, and we'll see how it transpires over the next several years. Trevor Lawrence, I think a lot of times, I don't know if he's plateaued, but he doesn't seem to have the ceiling as high as he did maybe even a year ago. I don't know if it's the injuries this year. I feel like he's tapered off a little bit.
Well, the Jags, think about this. They were 8-3.
Yeah.
Midway point, and now here they are 9-7.
9-7. And got to win to get in. We'll see what the guy does in Indianapolis. And then, of course, Stroud, as we're talking about, you got to do it consistently. Mahomes, guys like that come in, you're like, okay, you had a good year. Can you do it again? And then they did it again and then again. So, but the future is bright for these young guys, man. It's going to be a fun competition for the next several years.
Seems like the AFC South is kind of off and running, right? Mm-hmm. Surrounding the Titans with Shane Steichen in year 1. Anthony Richardson's missed the majority of the season. Yeah. He's going to come back next year, maybe with a step forward as far as his development of learning what kind of contact to take and trying to limit that, because Richardson was fun to watch this year. He was kind of a firecracker, right? Yeah. Running around.
He was playing well.
Right.
Getting the Titans fits. Up until he got hurt.
Concussions, shoulder, you name it. Richardson, done for the season, had to have shoulder surgery. And then you got DeMeco Ryans and the sort of culture he's already built with the Texans in year 1, and C.J. Stroud might win Rookie of the Year. And Doug Peterson in year 2 in Jacksonville. And again, the Jags can win a 2nd straight division title next week if they beat the Titans at Nissan Stadium. So it's a weird thing, KD, because all of those other franchises have made staff changes in the midst of the Vrabel era, but it feels like here are the Titans with some catching up to do.
And I think what Caller said it earlier, it's made changes, but they've been somewhat of this within. It hasn't really gone out and tried to find something new, something that might be impactful for the team as far as offense production, maybe even defense production. It's been kind of elevating guys from within, promoting from within. So, again, I think this is one of his most crucial off seasons since his tenure being here. I think that's going to speak volumes to where his emphasis is as a staff, as a player personnel, and picking up, developing players and deciding on players. This is a pivotal year for him, obviously. I mean, I'm not even saying nothing that's not obvious. I think people got that understanding. Like, this is a big year for Vrabel in his head coaching professional career.
It'll be interesting. Jags in town next week. We believe it would be Sunday at noon, most likely. That is not official. Kickoff times for Week 18 in the NFL. likely in the next 24 hours or so. We will know for sure. But either way, you know that the Lee Company countdown to kickoff will be on the air 3 hours before kick. Titans countdown at 11. Kickoff will be at noon between Titans and Jaguars, if that is indeed the official slated time. As far as Week 17 is concerned, the late afternoon slate has wrapped up. The Kansas City Chiefs are AFC West champs. 25-17, had to hold off a late Bengals surge for the win, so the Chiefs improve. They are 9-6 on the season. The Bengals fall to 8-7. Coming up tonight, we'll have Westwood One coverage of Green Bay at Minnesota. A couple of 7-8 teams going head-to-head. Jaron Hall gets the start for the Vikings, the rookie, another part of all the quarterback turnover that's been happening in the NFL here in the 2023 season. As far as teams that were eliminated today, Denver stays alive. They win 16-9 over the LA Chargers. So Denver 7-8. Jarrett Stidham 20 of 32, 224, 1 touchdown in place of Russell Wilson as the Broncos are able to stay alive.
That's going to be see, I told you so.
Right. No doubt. Trying to see who else was eliminated today in the NFL. May have to get out the scenarios map in order to do that, because I know that the Bucs had an opportunity to win the NFC South today with a win. The Saints would have been eliminated, but New Orleans got the win in Tampa, able to hold off the Bucs late to win 23-13. Either way, Week 18 is going to have a lot of fun scenarios going into the NFL postseason. Baltimore, Emmett points out in the F&M Bank chat, made a statement today, 56-19, the final over the Miami Dolphins. The Ravens are your 1 seed in the AFC, and the Dolphins at 11-5 do not have the AFC East necessarily wrapped up. The Buffalo Bills won today over New England 27-21. They are 10-6. So a lot on the line in Week 18 for the Titans. Just be about playing spoiler again as they host the Jags. That is our Eurofix look ahead. Tomorrow, we will all be off on New Year's Day on 104.5 The Zone as far as all the shows are concerned. You'll hear some of this. Titans Talkback will air from 8 to 10 a.m., recapping Titans and Texans, 26-3, the final in favor of Houston. And then starting at 10, Vol Network coverage will pick up before the Vols kick off against Iowa in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, a noon kick. Kevin Dyson, any predictions? College football playoff tomorrow? You got Bama, Michigan at 4. Who you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to say Michigan with their defense going to be able to handle Alabama's offense. And I'm going to go Texas. Texas, Michigan final. I'm going against the grain on that. I know all these Bama fans about to crucify me, but I'm going to go against the grain on
Well, it's funny because Michigan's the number 1 team in the playoff rankings. Michigan is the favorite, -1.5 last I checked. But that
which is almost like a pick 'em.
Sure, but that is going against the grain.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
There seems to be just this blanket assumption that Alabama's not going to lose this game. I admit I fall under that assumption.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think it'll be a good game. This idea that Bama's going to come in and rout Michigan is kind of insane to me. Bama hasn't routed literally anybody. This season.
Yeah.
Arkansas, USF, I mean, you name it.
And
Bama's kind of had the
Michigan's
scrap and
defense
claw.
is one of the most under-talked about defenses in college football. They've been up there in the top 5 all year long.
Right.
They shut down Ohio State, and they one of the best offenses in college football for the most part. And I think Alabama, even though they figured out some things, I just think they're not the juggernaut offense that they have been. Now, their defense is solid, obviously, but Michigan's defense, I think, is going to maybe make some plays and give them the nod, man. And I think Texas is playing well right now. I have so many concerns about Washington's defense as we talk about defense. Now, offensively, I think they give anybody problems. I don't care who they play. I think offensively with their weapons out on the outside and their quarterback, man, I think he's as good. Obviously, he was a Heisman candidate. He's as good as anybody in college football. But their defense, if it gets into a track meet, I take Texas. I think they got enough on both sides of the ball to win that game. So I'm picking a Michigan-Texas final.
It's always one of the best college football days of the year. Just sad that it's one of the last ones. Tennessee, Iowa. Who you got? Real quick.
Tennessee.
Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl. Again, you can hear the Vault Network coverage start at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Kickoff is at noon. Happy New Year, everybody. KD, this is our last one of these.
Happy New Year, y'all.
Last road game of the year for the Two-Tone Blue. So appreciate you and appreciate everybody listening. Hope you guys have a fantastic end to 2023. Titans Radio coverage is produced by Philip Noel and Brad Willis. The studio producer is Joseph Hunkapiller. Promotions director, Rich Ferris. Director of sales is Hunter Rice. The general manager, Allison Warren. Operations managers are Charlie Cook and Paul Mason. The executive producer of Titans Radio is Rhett Bryan. For our producer, Jackson Williams, and Dr. Kevin Dyson, I'm Lucas Panzica. Final score from Houston, Texans 26, Titans 3. Happy New Year, everybody. This has been Titans Talkback, presented by Lee Company on 104.5 The Zone.